Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. It is a Fireball Hot Take Friday. It is a playoff Friday because we have a game on Sunday, Preds in Vancouver, and it is a mock draft Friday, Jared Stillman mock draft 2.0 at 3:30 today. I could not be more excited for today's show. Ian is here today. Hello, Ian.
What up, what up?
I mean, is there anything else to talk about? I mean, we got the playoffs, we got the mock draft coming out, and a lot of people like the first mock draft. This mock draft, very different, because I've got some new information. And so we shall see how the Plinko chips fall. Again, that's at 3:30 today, our second, and I assume final, mock draft of the draft season. But I want to start on this. Yesterday we had an odd show for our standards because TD was in at 3 o'clock and then TD walked out the door and we went right into the Preds playoff preview show, which meant that I didn't have time to react to something TD said that as soon as he said it, I thought, oh boy, we're going to talk about this. This was yesterday during the TD Power Hour. TD said this about the Titans' plans, and I think we can all agree TD is really plugged in when it comes to the Titans. What was that? Oh, okay. So TD said yesterday on our program, we don't have the cut, but TD said yesterday on our program, which is, by the way, my fault. TD said on the program yesterday that the Titans want to trade back and even discuss the scenario of trading back and being able to get Joe Alt. And let me start by saying this. That idea scares the living crap out of me. The idea of, hey, we want to trade back. And then, hey, we want to trade back because we got to get more picks, and we want to trade back, and we still want to get Joe Alt. And the idea of all that scares the living daylights out of me. And I'll tell you why. Because what I've learned about the Titans with Rand Carthon as the general manager, if the Titans want to trade back, that means the Titans will trade back. It's kind of like the L'Jarius Sneed thing. If the Titans want L'Jarius Sneed, then it's not going to matter. Whatever the medicals say, whatever the Kansas City doctors say, whatever the physical says, it doesn't matter. They're just gonna ignore it and they're gonna go on. Minnesota didn't ignore it. Minnesota apparently pulled out reportedly because of the medicals when it came to the L'Jarius Sneed knees. Tennessee said, no, we're totally fine. Guarantee that $55 million. Just like when it came to trading Kevin Byard. You got a bag of footballs in return, but guess what? He was going to trade Kevin Byard. Didn't matter that you were 2-4. You've been 2-4 before you went to the AFC title game. When Rand Carthon decides he's going to do something, he's going to do it. And then whatever it is that makes that a good or bad decision, normally, be damned. And trading back in this draft is very, very, very dangerous. And I will tell you why. Because I think there are a small set of elite players in this draft. I've told you there are 8 if you want to count Rome Odunze. Some people do, some people don't. If you want to count Rome Odunze, 9. There are 9 elite players in this draft. If you trade back, unless you trade to 8 or 9, you run the risk of not ending up with one of those elite players. And it kind of reminds me of the 2016 draft. I've brought this up. Take the quarterbacks aside here because the quarterbacks are going to go high, and they're going to go high because they're, again, quarterbacks. So, for instance, Jaden Daniels. Is Jaden Daniels on his own an elite quarterback prospect as far as elite quarterback prospects are concerned? Like, is he as good as C.J. Stroud last year? Is he as good as Andrew Luck? Is he as good as Trevor Lawrence? Probably not. But Trey Lance was not an elite quarterback prospect either, and he still went ahead of Jamar Chase and Penei Sewell. So in the 2016 draft, Jared Goff and Carson Wentz went 1-2 because, again, the quarterbacks will always go first. So Goff and Wentz went 1-2. Here's who went after that. Joey Bosa, Ezekiel Elliott, Jalen Ramsey, Ronnie Stanley, DeForest Buckner, and then at 8 you got to Jack Conklin. And Jack Conklin was a good player. But Jack Conklin wasn't Joey Bosa, Ezekiel Elliott, Jalen Ramsey, Ronnie Stanley, DeForest Buckner. Foundational franchise stars. Laramie Tunsil was considered the number 1 prospect in that draft, and he fell on draft night because of the picture with the gas mask and the bong and everything else that honestly nowadays probably would have earned him a promotion as opposed to having him fall in the draft. Because once you got to Jack Conklin, and Conklin was a good player. Now, Conklin wasn't a great player. Conklin certainly wasn't to the Titans what Zeke was to the Cowboys on his rookie contract. But once you get past that, outside of Tunsil, who fell because of the character concerns, Leonard Floyd, good player, not elite. Eli Apple, sometimes a very bad player, sometimes kind of a good player. Vernon Hargrave, Sheldon Rankins. Again, Sheldon Rankins has been a starter in the NFL for 8 years or whatever it's been. He's a good player, but he's not a superstar. That's what this draft is. So if you get outside of the Brock Bowers, Malik Neighbors, Roma Dunze, Joe Alt, you get outside of that, now you're, again, in the waters of Taylor Decker, Keanu Neal, Ryan Kelly, starters in the NFL, solid players, but not elite. Well, I didn't sit through that horrendous season last year to watch the Tennessee Titans trade down to get a couple extra third rounders and maybe a late second rounder or something like that. I didn't sit through that to watch the Titans go and punt on getting an elite player. Last year, for instance, when Arizona made the trade of an elite player, Will Anderson Jr., they told Houston, blow our socks off. And they did. 2 first-rounders and the 35th pick. You make a trade like that, I'll be totally cool with it. But if the Titans want to trade back, what I've learned about the Titans with Rand Carthon as the general manager is he's going to trade back. And it doesn't matter if it's a good trade or if it's that crazy, terrible Buffalo Bills trade yesterday that Willie Donick wanted to pull the trigger on. And I hate to say it, but I am allowed to be anxious about the Titans trying to trade back here because I've seen the Titans try to outthink the room. And when they try to outthink the room, they end up drafting a guard with the 11th overall pick. When the Titans try to outthink the room, they trade A.J. Brown away for Treylon Burks. By the way, more on A.J. later this hour. So, while I think that there is the right reason to trade, for instance, somebody comes at you and they just blow you out of the water. You're there at 7. Drake May's still available. So is Joe Alt. I don't know why Drake May's fallen. And somebody offers you 3 number 1 picks and a number 2. You have to take the trade. But outside of that, I really worry about what happens if you're the Titans and you sit there and you say, okay, we're going to make a trade. We're going to make a trade. You call Denver up. Let's say J.J. McCarthy's still available at 7. You call Denver up, who's sitting there at 12, and you tell Denver, hey, we want to make a trade. And Denver says, well, we don't have a second rounder in this year's draft, so what if we traded you a first rounder this year and a second rounder next year and a fourth rounder this year? You could sell that. You could say, hey, we got a first rounder, we got a second rounder next year, and we added a fourth rounder. We need depth, we need picks. Great. But now the Jets have taken Joe Alt. And so when TD, who is incredibly plugged in, when TD says that their number, that right now they're thinking trade out, they'd love to trade out and still get Alt, it scares the daylights out of me. Just stick and pick an elite player unless you've done the math when you're on the clock and you figured out, okay, Bowers, Adunze, Turner, and Alt are still available, so we can trade to 11 and we still get one of those guys. But what I am scared to death of is I am scared to death of the Tennessee Titans passing on an elite level prospect, a franchise changing prospect, somebody who might one day wear a gold jacket. That's what I'm incredibly petrified of. Because there is a reason. You look at all these draft trade charts, and I don't care whose model you use. You look at a draft trade chart, and the higher it goes in the first round, the value is astronomically different. The difference between 3 and 8 is bigger than individual rounds when you get going later. Like a 3rd round pick to a 4th round pick may not be as big of a deal as 3 to 8. So in this case, it's 7. With 8 elite players in this draft, the idea of trading back just to trade back, which again is something that quite frankly I think Rand Carthon might do, it scares me to no end. I feel much better if it was, hey, the Titans have 3 dudes they absolutely love. If they think they can trade back for one of those 3 dudes, they're going to do it and still pick up an extra pick or 2. Fine. But don't trade back just to trade back. Because if you trade back to trade back, you're moving out of the range of being able to draft, again, in the 2016 draft, Joey Bosa, Ezekiel Elliott, Jalen Ramsey, Ronnie Stanley, or DeForest Buckner, and you're moving back into the range to be able to draft Taylor Decker, Eli Apple, or Leonard Floyd. Again, Leonard Floyd was a good player. He wasn't Jalen Ramsey. That's how we're starting. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. I do have a little news nugget, by the way, on the Joe Alt front that I want to get to. And we will do that coming up next. 615-737-1025 is our phone number if you want to weigh in. It's a Fireball Hot Take Friday on Stillman and Company. Hey, April is here, and I want to tell you about Window Nation. If your windows won't open for fresh air or seal tight to keep out pollen and bugs, talk to Window Nation. Because right now, for every 2 windows you'll buy, you'll get 2 windows free. And there's no limit on how much you could save. Plus, you can save even more with no interest or payments for 24 months. They've got the proven quality and affordable windows that meet or beat the national brands. So do not miss out. Call 866-90-NATION or visit windownation.com to schedule that free in-home estimate. I had the free in-home estimate. It was awesome. Again, for every 2 windows you'll buy, you'll get 2 windows free. So if you want to do that, take advantage of this great deal from Window Nation. 866-90-NATION, windownation.com.
I think this team wants to trade back. I think that's the first thing that they want to do. That's what I believe. Now, if they could trade back 10, 11, and still get Alt, hey, the world is a wonderful place. And everybody's playing Louis Armstrong music, right? But if they move back, I think, J.C. Latham also comes into the mix. But you said if Alt is gone. So
right.
Ideally what they want to do, I think, is trade back regardless.
No. And I don't think TD's got bad information. Somebody tweeted in and said, what would TD know? I mean, I think TD's probably as plugged in as anybody when it comes to what the Titans want to do and what the Titans may do. Let me just say this. The idea of trading back and not getting an elite player like Joe Alt, but getting a guy that, again, no disrespect to J.C. Latham, I just don't think J.C. Latham's elite. I've heard Trevor talk about, he might have to kick into guard. And look, if you have the 7th pick in a draft with elite players and you draft somebody who's going to have to kick into guard or who even might have to kick into guard, I mean, you just can't be doing that. Now, here's a little Joe Alt nugget that I have. I have talked to a league source who told me that Joe Alt has taken 3 top 30 visits, which means 3 teams have brought Joe Alt into their facility. The Titans, the Jets at 10, and the Giants. Now, I have heard a lot of people talk about the Giants. Let's go in chronological order. The Giants are at 6. I have heard a lot of people opine that the Giants could trying to add an offensive lineman, and I just don't see it. The Giants have no receivers. Darius Slayton is their number 1 receiver. Darius Slayton and Jalen Hyatt. No disrespect to those guys, but that ain't Malik Neighbors. So they've got no receivers, and I also don't want to completely rule them out at quarterback because, as Charles Robinson said, apparently the quarterback class next year is shaping up to be similar to the 2022 class when Kenny Pickett was the only first-round quarterback, and even he is already, has already been given the boot from his original job. So if a team like the Giants knows they're committed to Daniel Jones for this year, but they have the opportunity to draft a quarterback, and they may not have the opportunity to draft a quarterback next year, I certainly think they're in play at quarterback. So with the possibility of Malik Neighbors or Marvin Harrison or a quarterback, I can't see the Giants adding a 4th tackle. Andrew Thomas is their left tackle. He is a top-of-the-market left tackle, Pro Bowl caliber guy. You're not replacing him. They used a first-round pick, a very high first-round pick, 2 years ago on Evan Neal. He has not been very good. The idea is maybe he could kick into guard. And they signed Jermaine Illuminor from the Vegas Raiders, who is a right guard / right tackle. In a perfect world, Thomas plays left tackle, Neal plays right tackle, Illuminor probably plays right guard. What's the point of drafting Joe Alt? So that's the first team. Obviously, we know the Titans brought Joe Alt in for a top 30 visit, which is good considering they didn't attend his pro day, which is, again, try to figure that one out. Who knows? But I think obviously the Titans and Alt feel like a perfect marriage. The Jets at 10, bringing Alt in for a visit. The Jets at 10, to me, that is the line of demarcation. If you get past 10 on a trade down, just assume you're not getting Joe Alt. Now, maybe stranger things have happened. Will Levis was a second-round draft choice last year. This time, a year ago, everybody was talking about Levis in the top 5. So stranger things have happened. But I'm just saying, if you get a call and it's Denver at 12, it's the Raiders at 13, it's one of these teams, New Orleans, Seattle, that could use a young quarterback, you move past 10, just consider Alt gone. And the question has to be, what would you rather have? One elite player, one 8-time Pro Bowl, as Bill Polian would call them, a blue player. Again, like Brian Callahan said, when they were weighing Jamar Chase and Penei Sewell, two guys they thought were going to be 10-time Pro Bowlers. So if you trade back, you may be giving up on that. If you give up on that, then, I mean, like, how many okay players do you need to get in order to make up for that? Now, I'll use that 2016 draft again, because the Titans gave up the number one pick in that draft, and they ended up picking, I think, outside of the elite of the elite. Now, they did trade back up. They originally traded from 1 to 15, and then they used a 17-second to move up to get to 8, where they took Conklin, who, again, was a good player for the Titans. But in that case, the Titans grabbed 3 picks inside the top 45, right? 15. The Rams, 2 seconds from the Rams, I believe they were 43 and 45. Yes, 43 and 45, plus a first in the next year's draft, plus I believe there was another third, which ended up being Jonnu Smith in 17. So you traded away 2 top 60 picks in order to get 4 top 60 picks, one of which was in the top 10. So if you trade away Joe Alt, are you going to get 4 top 60 picks out of that? It's hard for me to envision you being able to do that. If somebody wants to knock my socks off, fine. And then, again, when it comes to the top 60 picks, we also have to think about the quality of who we're trading with for future picks. You know, a future first-rounder from Minnesota, if they're going to go with J.J. McCarthy at quarterback, I think is a much nicer pick than, say, a future first from Kansas City, who's probably going to be picking 31st or 32nd next year. 615-737-1025. Your phones are driven by WilsonCountyHunter.com on a Fireball Hot Take Friday. One texter says, Neighbors, Bowers, Alt, Dallas, Turner. Would you rather play against an elite wide receiver or tight end or an elite left tackle? Let's draft the touchdown scorers. Don't want to play against Neighbor or Bowers? I can get over playing against Alt. I mean, I just think about it this way. If you're going to have to play Josh Allen in Jacksonville, would you rather have Patrick Paul there or would you rather have Joe Alt there? I mean, I understand the idea of putting the ball in the paint. And again, Polian laid this out, and we played the cut. Quarterback first, touchdown scorer second, sacker third, interceptor 4, left tackle 5. So if you want to make the argument for Alt, I get you. Offensive line, this team needs a left tackle. This team needs a franchise left tackle. Go for it. If you want to make the argument for Neighbors, Adunze, or Bowers, get in the paint, I understand it. Just like Mark Dominic. But, I mean, to me, elite's elite. And I still think we need to remember this. When it comes to the Cincinnati, the Chase Sewell debate, Cincinnati drafted a tackle in the second round, Jackson Carman. The guy started 6 games over 3 years. Detroit drafted Amon-Ra St. Brown in the same draft. So while it's easy to say, hey, you know, Cincinnati went to a Super Bowl, they went to an AFC Championship game, with Jamar Chase, it was a great pick. And I'm not going to sit here and slam the Bengals for that pick. I mean, it was a good pick. To me, it isn't close. It is not close. To me, it is, on one hand, Chase and Jackson Carman versus Sewell and Amon-Ra St. Brown. So be careful there. One texter says, if Alt is still there at 7 and the Titans trade the pick, does that mean that Bill Callahan is not sold on him that high? I mean, Bill Callahan's a really good offensive line coach. I think the Titans are clearly banking on his opinion. I would too. His opinion matters to me. He's also not making the final decisions for the team. I'm sure there are plenty of times over the years, and I can't ask him because he's obviously not with us anymore, where, you know, Mike Munchak really, really, really wanted, you know, where he probably really wanted a guy, and Floyd's like, look, man, we're taking the outside backer here. So that is not a Bill Callahan thing. That is a thinking about, you know, the team with a broad brush kind of thing. More of your phones at 615-737-1025. Plus, A.J. Brown's Twitter fingers are back at it again, and we have got to talk about this. So we will. Stillman and Company on a Fireball Hot Take Friday, 615-737-1025 is the phone number. If you want to weigh in, we do have a pair of Preds playoff tickets for game number 3, which we'll be giving away later today in the program here on Stillman and Company. And tune into 94.9 The Fan today as the Sounds take on Omaha at First Horizon Park. Pre-game 6:20, 6:35 first pitch. Sounds Baseball on 94.9 The Fan, presented by Twin Peaks Family Leisure and Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning.
So A.J. Brown, just in the last hour, has unfollowed the Eagles or took all the Eagles crap off of his social media pages, replaced him with Tom Brady, and he's started to follow Jacoby Brissett.
And K.J. Osborne.
Oh, yes, that didn't register the first time.
Right.
New receiver from Minnesota.
You know what? If he had to...
He's coming to the Patriots.
It feels that way, doesn't it?
A.J. Brown tweeting minutes ago, TB12 is my favorite player ever. I watched The Dynasty, and it brought back memories from my childhood. Go look up what he did in 2015 when he was doubted/disrespected. Yeah, I see the disrespect. Motivated? Yes, that's it. I did not think changing my profile picture to the greatest quarterback ever would cause controversy. Take care. And then someone actually says, come on, AJ, you're smart enough to know how the internet works nowadays. You had to know how this was going to be taken. You had to know that. To which he said, I don't live by the world's rules. He's retired and the best person to touch a football. It's not that serious.
I think he's lying.
Felger and Maz in Boston. Yesterday when I got in the car, I went to the Felger and Maz podcast, see what they were talking about yesterday. You know I love that Boston show. And I saw A.J. Brown to the Patriots as a topic. And I thought, what? A.J. Brown to the Patriots? So apparently, and you heard in the cut right there, A.J. Brown takes out all of his Eagles references on social media. By the way, I haven't double-checked any of this, so I don't know if it's true or not, and I'm not going through AJ's Twitter. But AJ takes away all of his Philadelphia references, and he makes his picture on Twitter and Instagram and everything else, a picture of Tom Brady. And then he follows Jacoby Brissett, who stinks, and KJ Osborne, who also kind of stinks. And then, once people said, is this a sign with AJ? AJ took it back. AJ said, that's not what I meant. Everybody said they don't understand. They don't. Okay, they don't. Here's the thing about AJ Brown, though. And I think I know AJ Brown well enough to say this. And I think he'd never admit it publicly, but I think AJ Brown knows that I know AJ Brown well enough to be able to say this. Social media means everything to AJ Brown. You know, social media sometimes doesn't mean a lot to certain guys. Some guys don't even check it. Like famous people, they have it. And it's like their last tweet was June 16th of 2019. And like they're just not on it. And to those people, I tip my cap. I have to salute you. I'm not one of those people. But I also don't live my life based upon what Twitter thinks. I also don't live my life on Instagram. AJ does. When AJ was on the Titans, we'd see AJ watching the shows and things like that, always hearing what people said. He called in to a radio station earlier this offseason in Philadelphia to complain about what they were saying. So when A.J. Brown starts screwing around with his social media like that, it is absolutely a big deal. In fact, I can't tell you how many segments and shows we did where people were like, A.J. Brown said this, what does it mean? And then after 3 or 4 segments of discussing what it meant, like what could this mean that A.J. said on Twitter, A.J. would then tweet something about how everybody takes me out of context. And then A.J. was traded, right? Like, so it was like that was a big life lesson for all of us. So when it comes to A.J. Brown and all the stories of how unhappy A.J. Brown has made people or is himself in Philadelphia, I think there's real smoke to this. This is the A.J. playbook. Bitch privately, be passive-aggressive on social media, and then eventually the team gets tired of all of your passive-aggressiveness and your bitching internally that they do something about it. In this case, it was trade you for Treylon Burks. Now, because Treylon Burks isn't good, it got the guy who made that decision fired. But, I mean, you talk to the Titans right now, the people that, still made that decision, they'll tell you they're not upset that they traded away A.J. Brown. As much as you people be like, you traded A.J. Brown. This is why they're not mad that they traded away A.J. Brown. Now, I don't know if it's the Burks thing that they're happy with, but they're not mad that they traded away A.J. Brown. And so when A.J. says that this is not a big deal on social media, 90% of me says it is absolutely a big deal when it comes to A.J. So as of right now, I'd say it's 50-50 that A.J. Brown's going to become a New England Patriot. And as far as what it would take, I mean, like I said, like, you don't trade a first-round pick for a receiver that's worn out his welcome somewhere who's got a big contract. Stephon Diggs has already set the market for what A.J. Brown's worth. That's a second-round pick in next year's draft. So, for instance, if New England were to call up the Eagles and say, hey, we want A.J. Brown, the Eagles would probably say we're not going to trade away A.J. Brown. But if A.J. Brown keeps pouting, the Eagles would look at themselves and say, well, they're going to offer a second-round pick. We might as well do it now. So let's just go ahead and do it. So right now, I think it's 50-50 A.J. Brown's a Patriot, just based off of A.J. Brown's social media. Because A.J. Brown saying that it has to do with his love for Tom Brady means zero for me because AJ's history says that he doesn't tell the truth on social media. Zero. The other things I think from this, number one, do not text into this show saying the Titans should trade for A.J. Brown. That ship has sailed. And the third thing, I think, is a part of the second thing, which is, again, I don't want A.J. Brown on the Titans, so don't say that they should go get A.J. Brown or anything like that. But the third thing with this is, like, maybe John Robinson did get it right to trade A.J. Brown. He just didn't get the return for A.J. Brown that he probably should have. Like, the reason why the Titans moved on from A.J. Brown is because, A, A.J. was becoming a problem with the things he was saying internally. B, he was becoming a problem with the Twitter fingers, which, again, this is an example of that. And C, and I think this was a legitimate concern, they were concerned about his knee. And then A.J. goes that first year to Philadelphia. He's a model citizen, doesn't have any injuries. It's like, well, I mean, what's the problem with you guys? You know, I mean, what are you doing? But now, A.J. didn't play in the playoffs last year because he had a knee injury. The Philadelphia Inquirer had a story, and the headline was, the Eagles have a problem. It wears number 11, and it wears a headset, i.e. A.J. versus the coach. And I know A.J. said that that's all made up. But who do you believe? The media or A.J.? I believe the media. I'm sorry. So maybe John Robinson and the Titans did get it right when saying, hey, let's sell high on A.J. Brown because A.J. Brown's a problem. Now, I truly feel like A.J. wouldn't have had the same problems with Vrabel that he's had with Sirianni because I think A.J. respected Vrabel, and I don't think he probably respects Sirianni. And maybe having the money allows him to disrespect Sirianni, and we never saw A.J. with the money when he was here. But it does feel like there's a lot of drama. The first year with A.J., it was all production and almost no drama. The second year, it was a little 50-50. And now we're starting off the third year, and we're starting off with a lot of drama. I mean, who just deletes all their social media or decides that they're going to, I'm going to take down all my pictures of my team here, and I'm going to do something like make my profile picture Tom Brady. Somebody who is looking for attention. Somebody who's looking to cause a problem. That's A.J. Brown. I mean, I guess A.J. got what he wanted when he got the trade, but he told everybody he wanted to be a Titan for life. So I guess he kind of got what he wanted. But at what point is it like, hey, man, you can't be happy doing this all the time, can you? Like, you can't be happy being mad at everybody all the time. But it seems like that's something AJ's doing. 615-737-1025 is the phone number, 615-737-1025. My second favorite part about this is that if I didn't listen to Boston radio, I wouldn't even know that this was a thing. That A.J. Brown on social media made all of his pictures Tom Brady and followed the Patriots quarterback? I mean, shouldn't that be like a humongous headline? But I guess it's not because A.J. Brown does this kind of stuff all the time. One texter says A.J. Brown is Antonio Brown. I don't think A.J. Brown is necessarily like Antonio Brown. There's some real maliciousness there, right? Like there's some real violence, some real, like A.J., I mean, A.J.'s harmless. He just wants attention. Like there's a difference between the two. One texter says only the media would say they believe the media. I mean, I believe the media over A.J. Brown. If the media in Philadelphia says A.J. Brown's causing problems, I believe it because I think A.J. Brown was trying to do that here before he got traded. And when A.J. Brown tells me something's not a big deal, what I've learned is that with A.J. Brown, it is a big deal. So it's not like I believe the media on everything. I mean, I think it's a blanket term to say the media. I'm talking about the beat reporters who cover the Eagles who wrote this kind of stuff. But I absolutely believe it. They'd have no reason to lie. Whereas A.J. Brown, I mean, of course, he's going to not come out and say, yeah, I hate the coach. But AJ, he might do it. But he'll do it in a passive-aggressive way. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025 here on our program. Get back to your draft thoughts here on the program, as a lot of you are locked in on this Joe Alt thing. I don't want to trade back either. We'll do that next. Let's talk about FanDuel Sportsbook. FanDuel Sportsbook is my official sportsbook app. That's right, the NBA play-in tournament. The last night, I believe, of the play-in tournament is tonight. And the NBA play-in tournament gives teams the chance to play their way into the postseason. So it only seems right that new customers on FanDuel can play their way into $150. Just place any $5 bet, and you'll get $150 in bonus bets, win or lose, to use during the NBA playoffs. Bet on things like three-pointers made in a game or over-under point totals, first basket score, and more. You name it, it's there. Go to FanDuel.com/JGM to get started. That's FanDuel.com/JGM. FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. 21 and over in present Tennessee. First online real money wager only. $10 first deposit required. Bonus issued is non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire 7 days after receipt. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call the Tennessee Red Line at 1-800-889-9789.
I think this team wants to trade back. Like, I think that's the first thing that they want to do. That's what I believe. Now, if they could trade back 10, 11, and still get Alt, hey, the world is a wonderful place, and everybody's playing Louis Armstrong music, right? But if they move back, I think, J.C. Latham also comes into the mix. But you said if Alt is gone. So
right.
Ideally what they want to do, I think, is trade back regardless.
Okay, that's what TD said yesterday. I said at the show, hey, the Titans, TD's saying they want to trade back and that they still, want to be able to grab Joe Alt. That is not exactly what he said. What he said was they want to trade back. If they get Alt, cool, but initially that they want to trade back, and then you heard in the cut there, hey, J.C. Latham comes into the mix. That's worse! That's worse! I hate that more! So I'm supposed to think here. They want to trade the Joe Alt pick and take J.C. Latham. Or they want to trade the Joe Alt pick and take Olu Fashanu. Or they want to trade the Joe Alt pick and take Talise Fuaga, right? Because there are other tackles that are there. We've talked about them all. That's worse. At least it's hey, we're going to trade back and we're still going to get Alt. We got to figure out a way to do that. But we got to, and I think it's a risk, especially given the Jets and the Jets at 10 hosting him on a top 30 visit. And, the Jets read the papers around town, and Mike Francesa has said that they should be shot if they don't take Alt, and so on and so forth. To me, if the Titans are willing to run the risk of not taking an elite player, a Joe Alt or a Dallas Turner or one of these elite players that you have to have a top 8 pick in order to ensure that you have, if that's the case, that's worse. And I know the Titans. And what the Titans do is once they get an idea in their mind, they just go with it, right? The context of it to be completely forgotten about. We want L'Jarius Sneed, so we're going to get him. His knees are terrible. That's fine. Minnesota wanted L'Jarius Sneed too. I'm sure a lot of teams around the league wanted L'Jarius Sneed, and then they said, those knees were probably not. We're probably not going to be very interested in that, but not the Titans. The Titans traded Kevin Byard away for a bag of balls. And yet everybody's you had to do it, had to get something in return, They had been talking about getting Byard for months. They could have, if the only offer was a conditional 7th, they might have done it. What was the trade that the Jaguars kicker went to Detroit for last year? I think it was
some type of 7th.
I think it was a 2026 7th. If that was the only offer they got for Byard, they probably would have taken it. Because once they get an idea in their head, they're going to do it. And it scares the ever-living crap out of me that Rand Carthon's got it in his head. Now, maybe they're lying. Maybe they absolutely want to pick Joe Alt, and so what they're going to do is they're going to tell everybody the opposite, which they did that in free agency, right? They told everybody, we're not going to spend a lot of money. We're not going to spend it in one place. We're going to spend wisely. And then they did the opposite. So maybe this is exactly what that is, which is in reality they're Lord, please don't let the Chargers or the Giants take Joe Alt. Amen. But if that is actually what the Titans are thinking, trade back and pass on Alt, pass on Neighbors, pass on Bowers, pass on Turner. Oh, I hate it. I hate it. Hate. Coy in Clarksville says, Jared, if the draft goes as following, Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Drake May, Marvin Harrison, Joe Alt, Malik Neighbors, who are you picking? And you cannot take back in this, or trade back in this scenario. So if that were the case, I can't trade back, which again, it's so easy to say just trade back when we don't know, who would want to trade back and who would want to be able to. In that case, it'd be probably Bowers. If it was between Odunze, Bowers, and Turner, I would probably go with Bowers. But I could be talked into Turner. Yeah, I could be talked into Dallas Turner if you think he's Javon Curse. And the one thing I keep saying about Dallas Turner, and I have not watched the tape on the edge rushers, is Dallas Turner was sacking quarterbacks in the SEC at 18 years old, going up against 24-year-old offensive linemen. And that means something to me. I mean, so whatever. One texter says, the way Byard played in Philly, I would take a bag of balls. Really? Because Byard just got paid real money by the Chicago Bears. And if you look at the Pro Football Focus metrics, you analytic geeks out there that love this stuff, Byard, of all the free agent safeties outside of Xavier McKinney, so the free agent safeties that were like not going for the second contract, but were veteran guys that have already been paid on the second contract, Byard was better than all of them. Byard was better than Justin Simmons. Byard was better than Honey Badger. Byard was better than Eddie Jackson. Byard was better than all of them. So, again, I didn't watch every Philly game. I can't tell you how good he was or how good he wasn't. But as far as I'm concerned, I mean, he was good enough on the tape for Chicago to sign him to real money before the opening of free agency. And the metrics, the Pro Football Focus geeks, say that he was pretty good. One texter says, in the trade back scenario, if the Penn State tackle is there, the Titans are in fine shape. He's a better pass blocker. So, Rick Spielman, a guy who I have a lot of respect for and I trust, the former Vikings GM, is now doing a podcast for CBS and works on Sirius, and I really like Rick Spielman. I like him both, the guy, and I really like him as an evaluator, and I think he's good at what he does. He said, and I think this is like the succinct way of putting it, he does not believe that Olu Fashanu will ever be a top-of-the-league left tackle. Now, will Olu Fashanu be a starting left tackle? He thinks yes. He'll start on day one. Will Olu Fashanu be a decent left tackle that you can win games with? Yes. But he does not believe that he will be a Pro Bowl, All-Pro, top-of-the-league type player, whereas the consensus is that is what Joe Alt has the potential to be. There is a big difference between the two. Again, Joey Bosa or Leonard Floyd. That's the difference here. And as far as I'm concerned, like, if I had to suck so bad last year and I get the 7th pick in a draft with 8 or 9 elite players, I want one of the elite players. Kyle in Shelbyville says, Jared, don't you think Bill Callahan can turn J.C. Latham into an elite right tackle? I mean, again, the Cleveland Browns did not screw around when it came to tackle, even though they had Bill Callahan. They didn't run Nicholas Petit-Frere, a.k.a. PT. They did not run PT out there to play right tackle. They went and paid a boatload of money for Conklin, and they drafted Jedrick Wills in the first round. So you guys keep wanting to put the same old crap bums out there and say, Bill Callahan can do it, and it makes me very, very, very nervous. Very nervous about the idea of J.C. Latham when Trevor says that he might have to kick into guard. Woo. I mean, somebody just texted in and said, read your mentions on Twitter. TD is setting the record straight on your mischaracterization of his comments. I mean, again, I said, TD said they want to trade back and get Joe Alt. Then we played the cut, and the cut says they want to trade back, and if they get Alt, cool. There's not that big of a difference. And I corrected it. And I'm not going to apologize again because I already did it once. Okay? It's a minor detail. And I heard it the first way that way, and then I said it, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh. Like if it's a totally different thing. Trade down and try to get Alt as compared to trade down and don't care if you don't get Alt. Isn't the trading down and not caring if you don't get Alt, isn't that the worst? Isn't that worse? So I don't know why people would get upset about this. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. Okay. I have a gut feeling about this playoff hockey series that the Predators are going into at Vancouver. I have a gut feeling, and it is a gut feeling that I think many of you are not going to like. We'll get to that coming up next. Fireball whiskey, that's right. I love Fireball whiskey. It goes down so smooth and it tastes so great. There is no better way to ignite the night than to do it with ice-cold Fireball cinnamon whiskey. That's right. We got the playoffs to celebrate. We got all kinds of stuff to celebrate, and there is no better way to do it than to do it with Fireball Whiskey. Ignite the night. Please be 21 years or older to enjoy. That's Fireball Cinnamon Whiskey. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3, The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. We do have a pair of tickets to give away on this Fireball Hot Take Friday for the Predators game. I believe this is game 3. Let me make sure of this before I say this out loud. For game number 3 against Vancouver. Yes, it says the first Preds home playoff game. Game number 3 against Vancouver next Friday night, 1 week from today. And I think that we need to do the code word, and we'll give away the code word later. So what we're going to do is we're going to give you a code word now. And then after we give you the code word, what you're going to do is when I tell you to call Ian with the code word, not now, but when I tell you to call Ian with the code word, then you got to call Ian. And when you call Ian, if you've got the code word and you're the first person to do it, you'll be going to game number 3. So I want to start with the fact that, 8 years ago. No, not 8 years ago. 7 years ago. 7 years ago was 2017. And I said after a random March regular season Saturday night game at Bridgestone Arena that the Predators lost to the Blackhawks. I said the Predators cannot beat the Blackhawks. Sean Henry even said to me, he goes, "We want the Blackhawks." I go, "No, you don't. You can't beat them in the playoffs. They've got Taves. They've got Kane. They've got all these guys, Hossa and Seabrook and Keith and all these guys that have beaten you in the playoffs. You don't want them." And I was ardent and adamant that they were not going to beat the Chicago Blackhawks. That pissed a lot of people off. And then they swept them. And then it almost became a, "Don't pick us, Jared, don't pick us," kind of thing. So then what happened was when I would pick against the Predators, the people that would be mad because they only want to hear good things all the time, they would get mad. And then when I would pick the Predators, the people that are, "Oh no, you're going to curse us," they'd get mad. But I can only tell you how I feel. And I can only go off of my gut. And for some reason, I think the Predators are going to beat the Vancouver Canucks. I have not picked the Predators to win a legitimate playoff series since 2019. I don't count that bubble series against Arizona as a legitimate series. And the fact that they lost that was disgraceful. But I picked them to beat Dallas in 2019. They didn't. I picked Winnipeg to beat them in 2018, and Winnipeg did beat them. And so it's been 5 years since I have picked the Predators to win a playoff series, and I am going to do it. I think the Predators are going to win. I get this feeling, and I'll tell you why. Because this series that the Predators are about to start reminds me of the 2015 Predators-Blackhawks series. You say, wait a minute. What does a series of 2015, what does that have to do with this series against Vancouver on Sunday? And to me, I look at the two teams, and I see where they are. The Predators are a veteran playoff team. Saros has playoff experience. Yossi's been to a cup final. Forsberg's been to a cup final. McDonough and Shin and O'Reilly have all won the Stanley Cup. Sure, there are some guys on the roster who haven't played in the playoffs before, like Luka Evangelista or Tommy Novak or those kind of guys. But every team's always going to have guys that haven't played in the playoffs. But the core of the team is a very veteran playoff group. Even Colton Sissons has played in a buttload of Stanley Cup playoff games. Vancouver hasn't. In 2015, the Predators had home ice against the Blackhawks. And the Predators went toe-to-toe with Chicago, and that included most of the series with Shea Weber hurt. But that Predators team didn't have a lot of playoff experience. Yossi had a little bit, from the last Barry Trotz playoff run, but not really a lot. Neither did Forsberg. It wasn't a veteran playoff group. And so what happened in that series was the Predators blew leads. They had a 3-0 lead in Game 1, blew it, lost in overtime. They had a lead, I believe, in Game 4 of that series. They blew that. I think it was like a 3 overtime game, and they had a huge lead in Game 6, and they blew that. And the next year, the Predators went to the playoffs, and they played in 14 games, and they won the Anaheim series, even though they were down 3-2 after being up 2-0, and they went toe-to-toe with San Jose and won overtime games, and then they went to the Cup final, and then they won the President's Trophy, and you know the story. But Peter Laviolette would always talk about that Chicago series. And he would always talk about how, like, that group, the Craig Smith, Colin Wilson, Roman Josi, Ryan Ellis, Matthias Ekholm, Philip Forsberg, that group needed that Chicago series. Meanwhile, that Chicago team with Taves and Kane and Hossa and Seabrook and Keith and Hjalmarsson and go on down the line, that Blackhawks team had a ton of Stanley Cup playoff experience. And so when I look at Vancouver and I see their young emerging core, and they've got good players now. Like, this is very much, I think, a kind of an older, more savvy veteran core versus young dudes that got talent. Pedersen, but he's only 25. Besser is 26. Quinn Hughes, the guy who's going to win the Norris Trophy over Roman Josi, he's 24 years old. They don't have the playoff experience. I think they played a little bit in the bubble, but that was years ago, and the bubble is not the same as the Stanley Cup playoffs. They have all the pressure on them playing at home. They know they have to win one of these games at Rogers Arena if they don't want to give home ice back to the Predators. And again, kind of the little icing on the cake is Ryan O'Reilly. See, I know you guys look at Matt Duchene's point total in Dallas and say, I mean, we got rid of him for nothing. But just know that there were other reasons for why Matt Duchene's not here. And part of it is the idea that maybe he's a losing player and not a winning player. Well, Ryan O'Reilly is a winner. This time of year is when Ryan O'Reilly shines. Nobody ever is going to stick Ryan O'Reilly on the cover of a video game. He's not Austin Matthews. He's not Connor McDavid. He's not going to be Connor Bedard. But this is the time of year where he beats those guys. Even last year, they beat those guys. And so I just have this gut feeling. I think the goalie will play fine. I think it's a wash at coach. I think both teams have a great coach. I think both teams have a good goaltender. Your goaltender has more experience in the playoffs. They've got 4 guys in their core. You've got 4 in yours. Yours have the playoff experience. They have the talent. But I just have a feeling Predators are going to win this series. And again, I haven't picked the Predators to win a playoff series, a true playoff series, in 5 years. I didn't think that they could beat Carolina, even though anything could happen, and I certainly didn't think they could beat Colorado. But I don't only think they can beat Vancouver, I think they're going to beat Vancouver. 615-737-1025, add that to the list. And by the way, our code word is going to be 2015, because this reminds me of that 2015 series. Corey Curtis joins us next from News 2, his thoughts on the Titans, and if they're going to pull one of these elite players or not in the draft next week. Twice Daily, I love Twice Daily. Twice Daily, they love the Predators. Twice Daily has your cravings, and you can save on every visit. Stop in and get rewarded. All you need to do is join the Twice Daily Rewards program to unlock special discount savings and enter their sweepstakes, and so much more. Try their new wraps, Italian, ham and cheddar, turkey and Swiss, and Nashville hot chicken. And they're made to order with your favorite toppings. When you download the Twice Daily app, you can order ahead. It's real easy. Or at Twice Daily, it's snack time all the time. And they've got favorites like chicken fingers, tater rounds, and their brand new pretzels. So go ahead and give it a shot at Twice Daily. Twice Daily, what are you craving? Tune into 102.5, 106.3 The Game this Sunday for coverage of the Geico 500 at Talladega Superspeedway. Coverage begins at 1 with the race starting at 2. And coverage will also be available on the 102.5 The Game app and at theGameNashville.com. Had a nice long conversation earlier today with Corey Curtis, who joins us now on the program from News 2. So, Corey, I want to start it with this question, which is it as simple as the Titans are drafting Joe Alt at 7 and every other conversation is just killing time and checking boxes and segments until we get to next Thursday night?
No, because you don't know. I mean, we go through this every year where we think we know how the draft is going to fall, but we don't know how the draft is going to fall. I mean, for all we know, Chicago gets a burr up its backside and trades up to 4 and drafts Joe Alt. I mean, we don't know. We just don't. And so you have to go over every possibility, and Rand and crew have to go over every possibility, and they can't figure out how they're going to respond to it on draft night. They have to know in advance if this guy's gone, if this guy's gone, if this guy's gone, if this guy's available. They have to know what they're going to do because you don't have enough time on the clock to sit there and figure it out.
Do you think that the Titans are truly interested in trading back? Do you think that this is a real possibility? TD said that they could look to move back and then maybe be in the mix for J.C. Latham as opposed to kind of being where we keep talking about, Alt and Bowers and those kind of guys. And then if that's the case, then what kind of compensation do you want if you're sacrificing one of those high-end elite prospects?
Well, I think you and I are in lockstep here where we both want to see an elite player join this organization. So I think that's the preference. Now, the question is, if the person that you want that you believe is an elite player is not there, that's when you trade back. I mean, you go back to last year. When Skoronski was available, they said there was basically no way they were trading off of that pick. And there have got to be a couple of players that they feel similar about in this draft. So I think I would believe that Alt has to be the pick at 7 unless he's gone, and then you've got decisions to make. Are you better off with Neighbors or Odunze or Brock Bowers, or are you better off trading back to, 11, 13, and, still possibly getting one of those guys, by the way, they brought in J.C. Latham for a top 30 for a reason. They brought in the kid from Arizona, Morgan, isn't that his name?
Yep.
For a reason. I mean, so they've looked at other tackles. They have kicked the tires on other possibilities, and they have to because you can't just put all your eggs in one basket. It's not there. How much compensation they get depends on how far back they're going to trade back. If you go, from 7 to 9, you're not going to get that much. If you're going to get, but if you're going to go back 7 to 11 or 7 to 13, then you're talking about more compensation. Isn't Minnesota at 11?
Minnesota's at 11.
Yeah. I mean, I'd want both their first-round picks because they want a quarterback. And if you want a quarterback, you got to pay for him.
Corey Curtis is with us from News 2. So I already know your answer to this because we talked about it earlier today. Now I'm going to ask you about the Mark Dominic, Brock Bowers take, about how he wants, says it's a slam dunk to take Bowers. And I actually was talking to Dominic earlier today, and I said to him, I go, because here's something I can't get out of my head. Because you brought up T.J. Hawkinson and Kyle Pitts when we talked earlier today about tight end. Why is it that the best tight ends don't come in the first round? Shannon Sharp wasn't a first-round pick. Gronk wasn't a first-round pick. Kelsey, Kittle, Mark Andrews, Sam Laporta, none of those guys were first-round picks. Yes, Tony Gonzalez was a first-round pick, and T.J. Hawkinson has been a good player, when he got to Minnesota. But why is it that these high-end tight ends don't become superstars? And do you think that Bowers fits the mold of those guys, or that Bowers is a different guy and more in the Shannon, Gronk, Kelsey, Kittle category?
Look, I think he's immensely talented, and he was immensely talented from the day he walked in at Georgia. So he's not a guy who developed. I mean, he showed his ability early. So I think from that aspect, he's special, okay? Because you just don't walk into the SEC and be special out of nowhere. So I think he's a special player. I think the expectation for him should be to be a difference maker, for your football team. Why is hard to say because most college tight ends don't put up big numbers. Even the ones that are highly rated, they're projected to be very good. They test very well, but they don't use the heck out of them in the offense like some NFL teams do, where you see Travis Kelce catch 110 passes and you see other guys catching 70 and 80 and 90 passes. So it's all a projection. And the other thing is what is football about? It's about matchups, right? Mm-hmm. And so if you have a guy at tight end in college and he's a little bit faster, a little bit bigger than your typical one, you can match him up on linebackers and safeties probably more successfully than you can at the NFL, where those positions are just that much better.
Corey Curtis is with us from News 2. Do we not talk about Dallas Turner enough? Because the Titans, yes, we can say they've got two edge rushers in Harold Landry and Arden Key, but I think Arden Key is probably more of a low-end starter, high-end backup than he is a true coming off the ball, ripping the quarterback, whereas it does feel like Dallas Turner is that kind of prospect. It seems like he's the consensus top defensive player in the draft, and I don't think you can ever go wrong taking the best defensive player in a draft, and yet we don't really talk about it much.
Well, is anybody talking about him that much? People talk about him as possibly the top defensive player, but do we talk about him the way we talked about Will Anderson? Because I don't think the conversation's even close.
No, and I asked TD about that yesterday, and he basically said that, like Turner's good, but he's not Will Anderson.
Okay, so I think you just answered your question there. All right, you don't draft good at number 7. All right, you draft great. Now, if you're happy to get him and you think you can get him at 11, then more power to you. But I think there's going to be a more elite player there, and I don't want to draft good. I think I can get good at 38. Okay, I do. And Dallas Turner, again, I'm not hating the guy, but I just don't see him at number 7. And I don't know that he's the top defensive player in the draft. I think the Mitchell kid out of Toledo, the tape he has shown, the dog in him says to me, I like that kid a lot. And there are some other defensive tackles, the kid out of Texas, who might be, the defensive tackle. So I don't know how impactful say they're going to be in the passing game, which is what everybody wants to stop. But I think they can be good football players too. I don't see Dallas Turner, racking up, 12 and a half sacks next year.
Corey Curtis, Fireball Hot Take Friday. What's your hot take this week?
I put me in the camp who didn't think you were crazy with Drake May. We talked about it last week. I know that conversation lived on, and I'm not saying the Titans should draft him if he's available. What everybody needs to understand is this, okay? We can talk about this stuff until we are blue in the face. All that matters is the Titans board and then how the draft shakes out. We don't know how they feel about Drake May. We don't know how they feel about Malik Neighbors. We don't know how they feel about Joe Alt. We know they brought those two guys in for top 30 visits, so we know that means something. And we know they didn't bring in any of the quarterbacks, so they're not even considering it. But, they had to have done some work. And if you think that guy is better, I still think you have to draft him.
So I was using the Tim Hasselbeck cut from the Midday Show where they asked, hey, if Drake May falls to 7, what do you do? And Tim Hasselbeck, who called some of his games on the ACC network, says you take him. You take him, and then, he's your quarterback, talking about Drake May, and he just loves him. Well, Tim Hasselbeck is a coach. Granted, it's a high school coach, not an NFL coach, but he is a coach, and he's a quarterback who is a coach. And I know Callahan didn't play quarterback, but he's kind of the quarterback guru type coach. Yeah. I just put myself in the position of, if Brian Callahan loves Drake May from afar as much as Tim Hasselbeck loves Drake May from afar, if I own the Titans and we were in that war room and Drake May's name was still on the board, we'd probably start talking about it around pick 5. And if my coach was like, I want to take him, that is my quarterback right there. I didn't think I could get him, but I'd love to have him. If that's the case, I think I'd do it. But that's a big if because I don't know how Brian Callahan feels.
Well, we know Brian Callahan likes Will Levis because, what did Nick Coles say? He said, Will Levis is one of the reasons you take this job because you're excited about him.
Yeah, so, Vrabel and those guys said the same thing about Mariota.
Okay. Well, I do think that there's some compatibility there and that there's some look, we would hear more about the Titans in quarterback if they weren't set on Will Levis being their quarterback this season. And also, I think their offseason strategy would look different because right now their offseason strategy looks like they're building around a quarterback in his rookie contract. Okay?
Cool.
So to me, it looks like they're building around him. That's why I think they're not even really considering it. But again, go back to the Chiefs when they had Alex Smith. Alex Smith had a career year, and then they drafted Patrick Mahomes. Why? Because Mahomes was better.
Corey Curtis, News 2, as always. There'll be a News 2 draft special. I believe it's this Sunday, Corey.
Sunday night, we may have a Jared Stillman sighting. We're gonna see if that happens.
It's like Bigfoot.
Is your draft special tonight?
No, our draft special is on draft night. We will have the draft show.
No, your mock draft show.
I have a mock draft coming up as soon as I'm done talking to you.
Okay. All right. Well, then I'm going to have to tune in.
There you go. Jared Stillman, mock draft 2.0. Corey, great stuff. Appreciate you as always. Corey teased it for me. Thank you. Corey teased it for me. Our second mock draft and probably final mock draft of the draft season is next. Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. I love Hiller. They take great care of my home, and they can do the exact same for you. I have used Hiller for years, and I absolutely love everything about Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. That's right. Smile and save this month with Hiller because from now until April 30th, you can take advantage of big savings on home systems. Enjoy up to $1,500 off select new HVAC systems, whole home water filtration and descalers, or select new whole home generators. If you've been waiting for the right time to upgrade or replace your systems, now is the time. Visit happyhiller.com today for details. That's happyhiller.com. Hiller, proud supporters of the Preds, the Vols, and Vandy. Hiller, call the Happy Face Truck today.
With the first pick in the NFL Draft, the Chicago Bears select.
Okay, it is time for mock draft number 2, the Jared Stillman mock draft 2.0, probably our final mock draft. So let's start right off the top right there with Commissioner Goodell. With the first pick, the Chicago Bears are on the clock, and the pick is in. Chicago takes Caleb Williams out of USC, the same as mock draft 1.0. This is the easiest pick to make. It's not even close. Caleb Williams goes at number 1. The Washington Commanders at 2. I have gone back and forth on this all week. I'm sticking with Drake May out of North Carolina. And I'll tell you why I'm sticking with Drake May. Because I believe that ultimately the talent of Drake May, this has always been the Caleb Williams Drake May draft, just like last year was the Bryce Young CJ Stroud draft. And I just think at the end of the day, Adam Peters took this job thinking Drake May was going to be his quarterback. I listened to everything Tim Hasselbeck says about smoke screens and everything else. I don't know why you have to do it. I think Drake May goes number 2. And what really pushed it over the edge for me was when I saw a scout at ESPN.com told Matt Miller that he thinks that Drake May is the pick at number 2, though the Cliff Kingsbury factor and the Kyler Murray thing kind of throws me off a little bit, but I'll go Drake May at number 2. Our first trade at number 3, Minnesota deals pick number 11, pick number 23, and 2025's first-round pick to New England, who drafts Jaden Daniels out of LSU. I wondered, everybody said that Drake May would be the perfect fit for Kevin O'Connell. But I think isn't one of the strengths of a good offensive guru coach that they can take great talent and they can make that talent great, that they coach with the skill sets that are given to them? And so I don't think Kevin O'Connell's scared about working with Jaden Daniels. In fact, I think Kevin O'Connell probably gets excited about what he can do with a talent like Jaden Daniels. I think Jaden Daniels goes at 3. I think Minnesota is trading with New England up to number 3, no matter who is there. So whoever the third guy is, if it's May, they're making the trade. If it's Daniels, they're making the trade, but their quarterback is going to be the third guy. And I am starting to believe the hype that New England wants J.J. McCarthy. I just think of that Michigan helmet. I think of Robert Kraft. I think about Gerard Mayo. All they know is a Michigan quarterback who's tough, who's a winner, who's smart, who's all these J.J. McCarthy things because, hey, Tom Brady was a winner. Tom Brady was also good. J.J., I don't know. But I think that New England wants J.J. I think they know they can't take him at 3. I think Minnesota deals 3 first-round picks, 11, 23 in their first next year to move up to number 3. We now go to number 4 where Arizona has the pick. We have another trade. Chicago moves up from 9 and next year's first-round pick and selects Marvin Harrison Jr. out of Ohio State. And you're thinking, Chicago? It should be noted, Chicago brought Marvin Harrison Jr. in for a top 30 visit. Mark Dominic has brought this up several times, saying, why would Chicago bring Marvin Jr. in for a top 30 visit when it's obvious that Marvin Jr. is not going to be there at 9? Which makes me think, if you're Chicago, you have stockpiled all these draft assets over the last couple of years. Here's your opportunity. Just like they used a second-round pick for Montez Sweat, which might have been a little too rich, they look at next year's one and say, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to use next year's first-rounder, and we're going to make that pick Marvin Harrison Jr. to go with Caleb Williams. I have Marvin Harrison Jr. going at 4 to Chicago from Arizona in exchange for Chicago's first-round pick next year. And it should be noted Chicago still has Carolina's second-round pick next year from that disastrous trade for the The Chargers at 5 take Malik Neighbors. I do not believe, no matter how many times somebody can tell me that, hey, Jim Harbaugh's going to build this in the trenches and that's how he did it at Michigan. And whether it's Trevor or Dominic or Charles Davis or the Pro Football Focus mock draft or any of you guys, at the end of the day, Malik Neighbors is a game-changing wide receiver. The Chargers have no wide receivers. They have a franchise quarterback. They've got 2 tackles. Just like that kind of, hey, Minnesota will take whoever's there at 3. The Chargers will take whichever receiver is there at 5. If Marvin's off the board, it's Neighbors. If Neighbors is off the board, it's Marvin. In this case, the Chargers go Malik Neighbors at 5. New England traded out of 3 because they want J.J. McCarthy. The Giants at 6 tell the Patriots, eat it. J.J. McCarthy out of Michigan goes at 6 to the Giants. And I'll tell you why. Because supposedly next year's quarterback class, headlined by Quinn Ewers and Shedeur Sanders, is starting to be viewed, Charles Robinson said it on Robbie and Rex Road yesterday, like the 2022 quarterback class. The Matt Corral, Kenny Pickett, Desmond Ridder Wolf draft. Now, I think Shedeur is pretty good. Now, I worry about some of these things Deion's been saying. But, again, I think Shedeur is, I think he's pretty good. But, again, I can see the Giants saying, hey, J.J. would go number 1 next year. And we think we know Daniel Jones. We think we know Daniel Jones is no good. So we're going to take J.J. at 6. Daniel's going to sit on the bench. J.J.'s going to sit on the bench. He'll get all the offseason reps because Jones is coming back from the knee injury. But J.J. will sit the bench to begin the year. Daniel Jones will be the quarterback. And then J.J. will take over after being, I think, a little overdrafted by the 6th pick. And, Ian, do you know what this sounds a lot like?
What's that?
Daniel Jones drafted at 6th in 2019 when Eli Manning was still the quarterback, and Daniel Jones, well, maybe this is an overdraft, but we want to make sure we get our quarterback, and then he sits the bench behind Eli, and then he takes over for Eli. It's just history repeating itself.
Mm-hmm.
J.J. McCarthy at 6. So our first 6 picks, Caleb Williams, Drake May, Minnesota trades up for Jaden Daniels to 3. Chicago trades up for Marvin Harrison Jr. at 4. The Chargers go Malik Neighbors at 5. The Giants go J.J. McCarthy at 6, which leaves the 7th pick. And that's next. We continue the Jared Stillman mock draft 2.0 here Joint. Get half off a $25 gift card now while supplies last at GameNational.com/deals. Gift card is only good for the Tanger outlets in Antioch and inside Assembly Food Hall in downtown Nashville. It is the Jared Stillman Mock Draft 2.0. Just to recap where we sit right now in the first round, Chicago at 1 goes Caleb Williams. Washington goes Drake May at 2. Minnesota trades up to 3 using all 3 first-round picks. The 2 they have this year, they're 1 next year for Jaden Daniels. Chicago moves up to 4 to take Marvin Harrison Jr. They deal 9 and next year's first. Malik Neighbors goes at 5 to the Chargers. And J.J. McCarthy, a shock at 6 to the Giants, which means Tennessee's on the clock at 7, and Ian, who is still sitting there?
A certain tackle.
Joe Alt is still available. The pick is in at 7. We have a trade. The Titans want to trade, and what I've learned about Rand Carthon is if he wants to do something, he will do it. Even if it's not a good idea with what it takes in order to make it happen, he'll still do it. And in this case, Rand Carthon trades with Arizona. In fact, it is Arizona at 9 who initiates the trade to move up to 7. Arizona trades 9 plus 66 in the third round and 71 in the third round to move up to 7 to draft Rome Odunze, the wide receiver out of Washington. See, once Malik Neighbors goes off the board, Arizona, who's got all these draft picks, and they still have some good second-rounders, plus, let's not forget, they've now got Chicago's number 1 pick for next year. They decide to part with these 2 third-rounders in order to get up and get Odunze ahead of Atlanta, who it looks like is going to go defense, but Atlanta absolutely could go wide receiver because they've got kind of a hole opposite their current number 1 Drake London. It's Rondale Moore. Rondale Moore's not that good. So you could absolutely see them going Odunze. Arizona decides not to risk it. The Titans get 2 threes, and they move back to 9, and they stay in front of the Jets. Atlanta is on the clock at 8. Now, if I'm the Titans, it scares the crap out of me that the Jets could try to jump me here to take Alt, but Atlanta is going to go with Dallas Turner, the pass rusher out of Alabama. Atlanta has a huge need at pass rusher. Turner's the top defensive player on the board. He goes to Atlanta at 8, which puts Tennessee on the clock at 9. The Tennessee Titans select Joe Alt, tackle out of Michigan. And in this case, this is a win-win for the Titans. They get the player they probably were going to take at 7 anyways by drafting Joe Alt, but they pick up 2 third-round draft choices. That not only makes up for the loss of Will Levis, but also by grabbing 71, that gives them another third-round pick. And I believe one of those 2 third-round picks, I think 71, I think that's their pick. Like, I think that's the pick they traded last year in order to go up and get Will Levis. Well, they get that pick back, plus they get 66, which is a third-rounder. And I know I talk a lot about top 60 picks, but in this instance, I think everybody wins. Arizona's got a crap load of draft choices, right? They still have Chicago's number 1 next year in this trade, and you get your 2/3 and you get your player. Joe Alt to the Titans at 9 from Arizona via Chicago. The Jets on the clock at 10. Brock Bowers out of Georgia. Mark Dominic has sold me that all these mock drafts that say Brock Bowers at 15, 16, 17, it's not going to happen. Bowers is going to be a top 10 pick. Bowers could easily have gone to the Chargers at 5. I think you can make a case for the Giants at 6, given who knows what's going to happen with Darren Waller. That being said, I think that if Brock Bowers is there and the tackle is gone, the value is too high for the Jets. Aaron Rodgers needs a tight end, and not only does Aaron get the best tight end, who they can move outside to complement Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall, but also when Aaron's gone, they'll still have Garrett Wilson and they'll still have Brock Bowers. Brock Bowers at 10 to the Jets. New England is at 11 after their trade with Minnesota. They get sniped by the Giants going J.J. McCarthy at 6. So they take Olu Fashanu, the left tackle out of Penn State. Fashanu is still available, and they still need a left tackle. See, New England is kind of a wild card here because they could do anything. They don't have a left tackle. Their left tackle, Trent Brown, went to the Cincinnati Bengals in free agency. They don't have a wide receiver, so if they wanted to take Marvin Jr. or something at 3, they could. And we know that they don't have a quarterback because Jacoby Brissett's not very good. In this case, they trade back thinking that they're going to take J.J. McCarthy. J.J. goes at 6. That's actually not a bad thing for New England because now the Patriots are going to say, well, we didn't overdraft J.J. McCarthy. So they take the left tackle that they need, and right now they've got Brissett at quarterback, but they also have another first-round pick. New England at 11 goes Olu Fashanu with their pick from Minnesota. Denver is on the clock at 12. A shocker. Michael Penix Jr. from Washington goes off the board at 12 to the Denver Broncos. Here's the reality for the Broncos. If they don't use that pick at 12 to get a quarterback, then they better sign Ryan Tannehill because Jarrett Stidham and Ben DiNucci are not starting quarterbacks in the NFL. Sean Payton is entering year 2. When you enter year 2 after you fired Russell Wilson the way that they fired Russell Wilson, you better have an answer for that ownership. And I'm not saying they're going to fire him if they don't immediately get a quarterback, but at some point they kind of want an answer here at quarterback. Sean Payton's reputation is that he's a quarterback whisperer. We'll see. That might be a little overrated. But Penix is supposedly climbing up draft boards, and I think Denver, without a second-round pick, knows we can't wait to the 3rd round to see if Penix is available or to see if Bo Nix is available, and you can't draft Spencer Rattler and say that's going to be our starting quarterback. So Denver says, okay, this is our only choice. Michael Penix at 12 to the Denver Broncos. That takes us to 13. J.C. Latham to the Raiders. Jermaine Illuminor leaves in free agency. They don't have a right tackle. It's simple. I think they're going to go with Gardner Minshew as their quarterback. They'll have the backup be Aiden O'Connell, see if they can develop him a little bit, and then maybe worry about next year or maybe even signing another bridge guy after this year at the quarterback position, or maybe think about a Bo Nix later if they want to hop back into the first round. But with Latham at 13, it's too easy for them. They take Latham out of Alabama. New Orleans at 14 has to go tackle. They don't have a left tackle, and their right tackle's hurt. Dalise Fuaga is their pick at 14 out of Oregon State. Basically, again, just like Minnesota picking whatever quarterback is left, just like the Chargers picking whatever receiver is left, in this case, New Orleans takes whichever high-end tackle, kind of that second tier of tackle, Fashanu, Latham, Fuaga. They take the 3rd guy. In this instance, it is Dalise Fuaga out of Oregon State. He goes at 14. Indy is on the clock at 15. They cannot believe their luck. Quinyon Mitchell is the pick out of Toledo, the corner. Indianapolis has him as the highest-ranked corner on their board. They probably have him as the highest-ranked defensive player on the board. Indianapolis always in need of corner help. They really haven't hit on a corner in a while, and I mean really hit. You know, Kenny Moore was okay. Rock Yassin wasn't very good. They go with Quinyon Mitchell, the corner out of Toledo at 15, which takes us to Seattle at 16. Troy Fautanu. Is he a guard? Is he a tackle? Guess what? Seattle could kind of use both. You know, the ability to have Troy Fautanu, who is an absolute dog on the offensive line, plus they don't necessarily need to go in the quarterback market. They've got Geno Smith. Maybe they think they can develop Sam Howell a little bit. It's an easy pick for them, a guy in their backyard, Troy Fautanu at Washington. So as we sit halfway through the mock draft 2.0, Chicago, Caleb Williams at 1, Washington, Drake May at 2, Minnesota from New England, Jaden Daniels at 3, Chicago from Arizona, Marvin Harrison Jr. at 4, Malik Neighbors to the Chargers at 5, J.J. McCarthy at 6 to the Giants, Roma Dunze to Arizona at 7 from the Titans, Dallas Turner at 8 to Atlanta from Alabama. Joe Alt to the Titans at 9 from Arizona. Brock Bowers at 10 to the Jets. New England goes Olu Fashanu at 11. Denver, Michael Penix at 12. J.C. Latham, Alabama, goes to the Raiders at 13. New Orleans goes Thalise Fuaga out of Oregon State at 14. Quinyon Mitchell, the corner out of Toledo, to Indy at 15. And Troy Fautanu to Seattle at 16. Jacksonville is on the clock, and we will do that next. First, let's talk about the Tennessee Men's Clinic. You've put this off for way too long, and it's time to get it done and move forward with your sex life, and the Tennessee Men's Clinic is the leader in bedroom confidence. The reality is pills often quit working, and guys start making excuses for not coming to bed. Did you know that studies show that men will be more irritable and argumentative before bed just to avoid failing at intimacy? And yes, I know guys like you hate going to the doctor, but the Tennessee Men's Clinic was created in 2014 to take care of guys just like you. For a decade, the urologists and providers at the Tennessee Men's Clinic have helped guys with ED and weight loss, and they now even offer aesthetic enhancements and cosmetic procedures. Their ED, weight loss treatments truly change lives, and with no surgery, they are seeing success rates as high as 90%. They specialize in seeing guys who think they're out of luck regain hope that they can be successful in the bedroom and beyond. They even offer same or next day appointments. Guys, it's time to feel amazing and hit your goals this year. Stop thinking about it. Get in there and call the Tennessee Men's Clinic today at 615-208-9090. That's 615-208-9090, TennesseeMen'sClinic.com. Again, that's TennesseeMen'sClinic.com. The Jared Stillman Mock Draft 2.0 special is on Stillman & Company, 102.5, 106.3. The game streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. Live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game National Studios on a Fireball Hot Take Friday. So here's where we are. Number 1, Caleb Williams goes to Chicago. Number 2, Drake May to Washington. 3, Minnesota trades up for Jaden Daniels out of LSU. 4, Chicago trades up for Marvin Harrison Jr. 5, the Chargers go Malik Neighbors. 6, the Giants go J.J. McCarthy. 7, the Titans trade the pick to Arizona for Roma Dunze. 8, Atlanta takes Dallas Turner. 9, the Titans take Joe Alt out of Notre Dame. 10, Brock Bowers. I think I said out of Michigan earlier today, by the way. It's Notre Dame. 10, Brock Bowers, UGA. 11, or to the Jets. 11, New England goes Olu Fashanu. 12, Denver takes Michael Penix Jr. 13, the Raiders take J.C. Latham. 14, New Orleans take Thalise Fuaga. 15, Indianapolis goes Quinyon Mitchell. 16, Seattle takes Troy Fautanu, which puts Jacksonville on the clock at 17. Jacksonville can't believe it. Brian Thomas Jr. out of LSU is available. They're looking at their board. They're saying, wait a minute, he is the perfect replacement for Jacksonville for Calvin Ridley. Yes, they signed Gabe Davis, but this is a dynamic wide receiver that they can draft, that they can develop as to the eventual go-to guy for Trevor Lawrence along with Christian Kirk. Brian Thomas Jr. out of LSU. He falls a little bit because we had that run on quarterbacks. 5 quarterbacks are off the board, which means somebody has to fall back. Brian Thomas Jr. out of LSU has fallen back to Jacksonville at 17. Cincinnati is on the clock at 18. Amarius Mims out of Georgia is a slam dunk for Cincinnati at 18. Cincinnati has 2 tackles right now. They've paid Orlando Brown Jr. a boatload of money to play the left side, even though he might traditionally be more of a right tackle. And they've got Trent Brown, the big old fat boy who's on a 1-year deal from the Patriots, because last time he got a long-term extension, he got up to 400 pounds. The idea here, Mims, who is very inexperienced at Georgia, goes to Cincinnati, where he'll play a lot in the preseason. And Amarius Mims will develop on the bench for about the first half of the season, and then he will take over at right tackle for Trent Brown and maybe even be the long-term left tackle for Joe Burrow in Cincinnati. He's a little bit of a project because of his inexperience, but that's fine for Cincinnati, who already has 2 starting tackles. Amarius Mims at Georgia goes at 18 to Cincinnati. The Rams are on the clock at 19. Byron Murphy II, the best defensive lineman in the NFL draft, goes to the Rams. Why? They've got to replace Aaron Donald. You do not lose Aaron Donald and just wing it in order to get back. They hit on some picks last year, including the kid out of Tennessee, who I think led all rookies in sacks. They're good on the edge. They need a guy in the middle. Byron Murphy out of Texas is that guy for the Rams at pick number 19. Again, I don't like saying slam dunk, but right there, they've got to replace Donald. He's the best guy on the board, and he goes to the Rams. Pittsburgh, with no quarterback, is on the clock at 20. Pittsburgh also doesn't have a center, which will allow them to take Jackson Powers Johnson, the number 1 center in the draft, out of Oregon. Now, look, I'm friends with Oregon's offensive coordinator, Will Stein. I asked him about JPJ. I said, tell me about this guy. How good, can he be? He said he is going to be a great player. Now, look, he's also probably a little biased, but the Steelers need a long-term option at center. And now that we're outside of the top 20, this is the kind of place where you can take a center. You can take an interior offensive lineman. Because now we're getting to, okay, give me guys that are maybe not at the premium positions, but can start right away. Jackson Powers Johnson out of Oregon goes to the Steelers at 20, and he will start and play right away. 21, the Dolphins are on the clock. We have a trade. Dallas trades 24 and 87 in the third round to move up to 21 to jump Philadelphia to draft Tyler Guyton, the offensive tackle out of Oklahoma. The Cowboys need help on the offensive line. Tyron Smith leaves. There's talk about, okay, what do we do? Do we move Tyler Smith out to left tackle? Do we maybe draft a guard a little bit later? No. Jerry Jones, if you look, they invest heavily on the offensive line. They will continue to do so. They will draft Tyler Guyton, and he will be on their offensive line. They want to get ahead of the Eagles, who are looking at a long-term Lane Johnson replacement. So Dallas jumps him with Miami, gets to 21, and takes Tyler Guyton before Philadelphia can draft him to be their right tackle. But that's okay, because Philadelphia is sitting there at 22, and they're going to make this pick. They're going to run this card in to the commissioner. Philadelphia can't believe it. Terrion Arnold out of Alabama is still on the board. Some people think he is the best corner in the draft, and somehow he's there at 22. We saw that Philadelphia secondary at the end of the year, specifically in that playoff game against Tampa Bay, where, look, the older guys, Bradbury, Maddox, Slay, I mean, they just it's time to go young. And with Terrion Arnold on the board, I mean, I just don't somebody explain to me here how Philadelphia can't take Terrion Arnold. So here we are, again, picks 17 through 22. Jacksonville goes Brian Thomas Jr. out of LSU. Cincinnati goes Amarius Mims out of Georgia. The Rams go Byron Murphy II out of Texas. Pittsburgh goes Jackson Powers Johnson out of Oregon. Dallas trades up with Miami to go Tyler Guyton out of Oklahoma. And Philadelphia goes with Terrion Arnold at 22, the corner out of Alabama. New England is on the clock at 23 because they made that trade earlier with Minnesota. Minnesota traded 11-23 in their first next year. The Patriots have already used the 11th pick on Olu Fashanu. What do they do at 23? We will do that next as we continue and wrap up the Jared Stillman Mock Draft 2.0 on Stillman and Company on a Fireball Hot Take Friday. Hey, join the National Super Speedway in the city of Lebanon for Speedway on the Square tomorrow from 1 to 6 in downtown Lebanon. Stop by and bring the family for a day filled with inflatables, face painting, balloon art, live music, and a ticket giveaway to the Ally 400 NASCAR Cup Series race at 3:30. Also, Vandy Baseball is on 102.5, 106.3 The Game, starting at 5:45 today as they take on Florida with first pitch at 6. Vandy Baseball is brought to you by Smoky Mountain Tops, your countertop experts. Visit SmokyMountainTops.com. Do not miss Nashville's best 2024 NFL draft coverage on 102.5, 106.3 The Game next Thursday. Stop by Twin Peaks in Madison at 6 o'clock for the 2024 NFL Draft Show. Get the best draft coverage as we break down each pick at the home of the 29-degree beer. Coverage presented by Parman Tractor Equipment, ESPN Bet, and Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning. And, again, everybody's favorite part of draft night is the Jared Stillman reaction. And, look, I'm telling you this right now. I am not playing for the crowd. If the Titans draft Joe Alt, I'll be happy. If they draft Brock Bowers, I'll be happy. If they draft Dallas Turner, I'll be happy. If they draft some bozo, I will go crazy. And that's just how, I guess, how I see it. Okay, mock draft 2.0. Just to recap, Chicago at 1 has Caleb Williams. Washington at 2, Drake May. Minnesota at 3, Jaden Daniels. Chicago at 4, trades up, Marvin Harrison Jr. The Chargers, Malik Neighbors at 5. The Giants, J.J. McCarthy at 6. Arizona trades with Tennessee from 9. They made the trade with Chicago earlier. To 7, Roma Dunze. Atlanta at 8 goes Dallas Turner. The Titans at 9 take Joe Alt. The Jets at 10 go Brock Bowers. New England at 11 in the trade with Minnesota goes Olu Fashanu out of Penn State. Denver at 12, Michael Penix. The Chargers at 13 go J.C. Latham. New Orleans at 14 goes Thalise Fuaga. The Colts at 15 go Quinyon Mitchell. Seattle at 16 with Troy Falatanu. Jacksonville at 17 takes Brian Thomas Jr. Cincinnati at 18 takes Amarius Mims. The Rams at 19 go Byron Murphy. Pittsburgh at 20, Jackson Powers Johnson, the center. Dallas trades up to 21 to take Tyler Guyton. Philadelphia at 22 takes Terrion Arnold. New England is now on the clock at 23. And New England's in a tough spot because they made the trade with Minnesota where they didn't want Jaden Daniels or Drake May, so they made the trade with Minnesota. They want J.J. McCarthy. But the Giants sniped him at 6. So at 11, they didn't want to overdraft Michael Penix. They took Olu Fashanu. They still have needs at receiver and really all across the place, but especially at quarterback. New England at 23 is on the clock, and the pick is in. Bo Nix, quarterback out of Oregon. Somebody has to play quarterback for the New England Patriots. And they thought they were going to trade down for McCarthy. And when McCarthy went off the board at 6, they said to themselves, well, it's okay because we didn't overdraft him. But now they've only got one other first-round pick. They've got to use it. They've got to have a quarterback. And so they make sure to get in there, and they make sure to take Bo Nix out of Oregon with the 23rd pick. Miami is on the clock. They have received this pick from Dallas in exchange for moving down from 21 at 24. Miami, the pick is in. Graham Barton out of Duke is the pick for Miami. Here's what's crazy about Graham Barton. He can play any position on the offensive line. Here's what's crazy about the Dolphins. They can use help at any position on the offensive line. Teron Armstead, their left tackle, has talked openly about retiring this season. Well, what are they going to do there? They lost Robert Hunt, their guard, in free agency to Carolina. And, Ian, do you know who the starting center for the Dolphins is right now?
Aaron Brewer.
Aaron Brewer. So they can use help everywhere, and Graham Barton can play it. So that is a perfect match of team, player, need, and trading down and picking up the 87th pick, a third-rounder, in order to get exactly what they need. Great job by Chris Greer at Miami at 24. Green Bay on the clock at 25. And we have a trade. New England trades back into the first round. They deal 34 in the second round, 68 in the third round, and a 2025 second-round pick to move up to take A.D. Mitchell, the wide receiver out of Texas. New England has to get in order to get ahead of Buffalo at 28, which seems like a perfect match for A.D. Mitchell. They need the receiver. They went in with huge needs at wide receiver, quarterback, and wide receiver and left tackle. Fashanu at 11's their left tackle. Nix at 23 is their quarterback. And now at 25, A.D. Mitchell from Green Bay is their wide receiver. Tampa Bay is on the clock at 26. Shaq Barrett is out. The old defensive line, JPP, gone. Ndamukong Suh, gone. Vita Vea still there. This is an easy pick. Jared Verse out of Florida State. And I think there's some concerns injury-wise with the hips, and I think that has dropped Verse a little bit. But for a pass rusher, 26, it's easy for Tampa Bay. They run that card in there. Jared Verse out of FSU to the Buccaneers at 26. Arizona with their second first-round pick. They traded back from 4 to 9 with Chicago. They traded up to 7 to draft Roma Dunze, and they are on the clock at 27. When you have as many picks as Arizona has, you can take a risk on Leatu Latu, the pass rusher out of UCLA. If Leatu Latu had never been injured, Leatu Latu probably goes in the top 10. But because at one point he was told by doctors he'd never be able to play football again, that is a very, very scary proposition for a general manager to use that first-round pick on such a high injury risk. But knowing that they've already got Roma Dunze, knowing that they now have Chicago's first-round pick in next year's draft after trading back out of 4, and knowing that they still got a high second-rounder, they will take the risk on Leatu Latu at 27 to Arizona, and they hope to get what they lost when they once had J.J. Watt and Chandler Jones together. That puts Buffalo on the clock at 28. Xavier Legette, the wide receiver out of South Carolina, goes off the board at 28. And at this point, it was Legette versus McConkey versus Worthy. They really want A.D. Mitchell, but they can't have him because he went to New England at 25. Legette is probably, in my opinion, the best, total package out of that group. Worthy is probably the best runner. McConkey is probably the best route runner. But Legette can fly. He can play outside. He can take the top off of a defense. He's a big, physical receiver, and that's what they need to replace Stephon Diggs to go with Khalil Shakir. Xavier Legette at 28 to the Buffalo Bills. Detroit is on the clock at 29. They need a pure pass rusher to go opposite Aiden Hutchinson. Chop Robinson out of Penn State is the pick for Detroit at 29. It was easy for them. They got the Ravens behind them. They know the Ravens are going pass rusher. So for Detroit, it was who's the best pass rusher on the board. In this case, it's Chop Robinson. Detroit goes Chop Robinson at 29. The Ravens at 30 go Darius Robinson out of Missouri. And some of you might say, ooh, that's high. Yes. But Robinson had, the tape from what the scouts say is that Robinson is a first rounder. And there is no team that develops these outside rushers and these defensive ends, these hybrids, these Clowney types like the Baltimore Ravens. Well, Clowney's not there anymore, and they need to replace it. Darius Robinson is their guy at 30. At this point, when you're at 30, it's not the same as 35, but it's similar. And so here Baltimore can go for need, and they get a guy they can develop in Darius Robinson. San Francisco is on the clock at 31. They thought about tackle here, but a lot of the first-round tackles are off the board. So San Francisco goes Kool-Aid McKinstry, the corner out of Alabama. Now, Kool-Aid McKinstry is probably a top 20 pick if he doesn't show up at the combine with a Jones fracture. But he did. San Francisco has 2 older corners that will be free agents after this year, and I believe they lost a corner in free agency as well. They need a nickel guy. Kool-Aid McKinstry can be that, and then develop into a full-time starter after this year. Kool-Aid McKinstry, they let the foot heal. He goes to San Francisco at 31, and Kansas City is on the clock at 32. Xavier Worthy feels like the pick here, but it's not. Roger Rosengarten goes out of Washington. They really thought San Francisco was going to go with Rosengarten and put him there at right tackle in place of Colton McKivitz, but instead, Kansas City is going to take Rosengarten, and they are going to try him at left tackle. The reason why, right now, their left tackle is Wanye Morris, a third-rounder they took in last year's draft. And maybe Wanye Morris ends up being their left tackle, but they've got a Jawan Taylor-sized problem right now at right tackle. Taylor's under contract, and he'll be on the team, and they'll hope that they can get better out of him. But the reality is he's probably not going to be there long. Roger Rosengarten out of Washington goes at 32 to Kansas City. So to recap, the mock draft 2.0, Chicago at 1, Caleb Williams. Washington at 2, Drake May. Minnesota trades up to 3, Jaden Daniels. Chicago at 4 trades up with Arizona for Marvin Harrison Jr. Malik Neighbors at 5 to the Chargers. J.J. McCarthy at 6 to the Giants. Arizona trades up from 9 with Tennessee for Roma Dunze at 7. Atlanta goes Dallas Turner at 8. Tennessee goes Joe Alt at 9. The Jets go Brock Bowers at 10. New England, Olu Fashanu at 11. Denver, Michael Penix Jr. at 12. The Raiders, J.C. Latham at 13. New Orleans, Thalise Fuaga at 14. Indianapolis, Quinyon Mitchell at 15. Seattle, Troy Fauatanu at 16. Jacksonville, Brian Thomas Jr. at 17. Cincinnati, Amarius Mims out of Georgia at 18. The Rams, Byron Murphy II at 19. Pittsburgh, Jackson Powers Johnson, the center out of Oregon at 20. Dallas, in a trade with Miami, goes Tyler Guyton out of Oklahoma. Philadelphia goes Terrion Arnold out of Alabama at 22. New England with Bo Nix at 23. Miami with Graham Barton out of Duke at 24. New England trades back into the first round for A.D. Mitchell out of Texas. Tampa Bay goes Jared Verse out of Florida State. Arizona, Laiatu Latu out of UCLA at 27. Buffalo with Xavier Legette at 28. Detroit, Chop Robinson at 29 out of Penn State. Baltimore with Darius Robinson out of Missouri at 30. San Francisco goes with Kool-Aid McKinstry out of Alabama. And Kansas City goes Roger Rosengarten from Washington at 32. We'll get to your reaction, your thoughts on the Jared Stillman mock draft 2.0 and the Titans making the trade back to 9 with Arizona, picking up 2 third-rounders, 66 and 71, and still getting Joe Alt. 615-737-1025. Fireball Hot Take Friday. Love to talk about Fireball Cinnamon Whiskey. That's right. I love Fireball Whiskey. Goes down so smooth, and it tastes so great. There is no better way to ignite the night than to do so with ice-cold Fireball Cinnamon Whiskey. I love Fireball Whiskey. Why? Because Fireball Whiskey is the best. So this weekend, when you're celebrating whatever it is you want to be celebrating, be sure to enjoy with Fireball Whiskey. Ignite the night. Please do it responsibly and be 21 years or older to enjoy Fireball Cinnamon Whiskey.
You met with the Titans, right? You were here on a visit?
Yes, I was.
How was that visit? Like, what were some of the things that stood out to you?
Yeah, for me, it was obviously a great experience overall. I was able to meet with a whole bunch of different people and just got to, learn about them, learn about the process at the Titans and what they, see for me and how they want me to learn, and being able to meet with both, Coach Brian Callahan and Coach Bill Callahan, and just being able to sit down and talk with them and, assess my game, assess what they see for the future, and things like that were very important to me. And, overall it was a great experience.
Joe Alt on Talking with TD. Joe Alt, by the way, is scheduled to be on the program next week. But Joe Alt sitting there, and everybody's wants Joe Alt or bust. Don't trade out, take Alt, whatever it takes. In the Jared Stillman mock draft 2.0, I have the Titans trading with Arizona, who trades with Chicago, in order to take Joe Alt, and they pick up 2 third-round draft choices by doing that. And at that point, the Titans will say, hey, we still got the player we wanted, plus the third-rounder for Levis, plus the third-rounder for L'Jarius Sneed, but we'll get it this year. And that'll be the deal with Arizona. Now, all of this is contingent upon Arizona making the trade out of 4 with Chicago to get Marvin Jr. Now, the reason I put Chicago there at 4 for Marvin Jr. in the mock draft is because Chicago hosted Marvin Harrison Jr. on a top 30 visit. Chicago needs their top 30 visits, right? Because you still have to fill out your roster. You have the 9th pick. And so it's like, if you're really going to be bringing people in here, not only do you need to hit on your picks, but you got to hit on the 4th rounder and some of these others, because you used a 2nd rounder for Montez Sweat. You don't have that. You still need work on your offensive line. And yet they brought Marvin Jr. in. And Marvin Jr. won't work out at Pro Day. He won't work out at the Combine. He won't talk to the teams. He won't talk to people he doesn't want to talk to. Why is Marvin Jr. going to Chicago when we know that they're going to take Caleb Williams? And I believe that that's because Chicago is willing, with all the picks they have, including Carolina's 2nd next year, that they're going to be willing to deal that 1st rounder to move up with Arizona in order to get Marvin Jr. to be the guy that grows with Caleb Williams. Well, once that happens, Arizona's at 9. And Arizona can stay at 9, and they can get a pass rusher like Dallas Turner or Jared Verse, or maybe get Brock Bowers, but they're set at tackle. And once Malik Neighbors goes at 5 off the board, they're going to try to get back up. The Giants don't want to trade that pick because they're going to take J.J. McCarthy, because if they trade that pick, they run the risk of New England jumping them to get J.J. So once J.J. goes off the board to the Giants, Arizona sees Atlanta that has a need at wide receiver and says, let's jump them. Tennessee says, Arizona's not taking Joe Alt. Atlanta's not taking Joe Alt. We get 2 thirds in order to make this deal. And everybody wins. And it reminds me of what the Titans did in the 1996 draft. Because in the 1996 NFL draft, the then Houston Oilers, I guess this was their last draft as the Houston Oilers, the Houston Oilers started the draft with a pretty high 1st-round pick. But they traded back. Because, again, they had a certain player they really, really, really wanted. And so they traded that pick in the 96 draft. They then traded up after they traded back in order to move up to 16 or 14 to draft Eddie George. If you have the board done correctly and understand how other teams view players, you can make a move down, pick up those picks, again, that are not top 60 picks, so I wouldn't lose an elite player over it. But at that point, you can work that deal, get those picks, and everybody gets the player they want. And if they want to trade down, they want to do that, you will not see me go crazy on draft night. If they end up getting 2 thirds because they trade from 7 to 12 and they end up not getting Joe Alt, then I'll go crazy. But I think that is the best case scenario for the Titans is Chicago brings in Marvin Jr. because they just want him. Well, okay, you want to get from 9 to 3, you got to give me next year's 1. Chicago says, screw it. For Marvin Jr., we'll do it. Because by the time we pick at 9, all 3 receivers might be gone. So let's bite the bullet, and let's consider next year's first-round pick as Marvin Harrison Jr. Well, then Arizona still needs to get a receiver. They move up. What do they need the extra thirds for? They got another first in this year's draft. They've got a high second this year. Go ahead and make the move. They got Chicago's first next year. Make the move. Joey from Bellevue says, I was expecting the Packers to draft a left tackle. They need it after they signed Andre Dillard. They do. But they've got a pick that filled in last year for Bakhtiari, who may be their left tackle. And I think for Green Bay, again, in the mock draft, I have Green Bay trading out and picking up 34, which is top of the second round, so they can still get Patrick Paul or Kingsley Suamataia, a third rounder at 68, and a second rounder next year. I mean, that is really stocking the cupboard if you're Green Bay. Why they signed Andre Dillard, I have no idea. I have no idea why they signed Andre Dillard. One texter said, Jared, who is your ideal pick in the second round if the Titans take Joe Alt? Well, if the Titans take Joe Alt, I would like either Ricky Pearsall, Ladd McConkey, or Xavier Worthy. Now, the difference is that Pearsall and McConkey can play in the slot, and that's where I'd like to put them. But I'm never going to turn down a receiver who can run. And Worthy can run. I also wouldn't rule out the idea of taking a right tackle. If Suamataia is there at 37 and you can take him, I wouldn't rule it out. But as far as like knowing who the corners in the second round are, that's a TD question. That's not a me question. I mean, that is, again, the second round. It's crazy because the second round's important. But I was thinking about this really all week. I've never been like this into the top of the draft. And then I realized because ever since the Titans picked Corey Davis in 2017, they haven't been that high. And no offense to me, but in 2017, I think I could say I was a baby sportscaster in 2017. You know, I was doing afternoon drive in Nashville at 27 years old, which was really cool. But I had a lot to learn. It's like when I heard Bill Polian talk about kind of the 4 years of a quarterback, you know, the first year, just get in and out of the huddle. The second year, you got to start reading the defense. The third year, you've got to start using your players and knowing what they can do. The fourth year, you need to really be able to manipulate defenses and take advantage of what they're giving you and things like that. And the fifth year, you need to be able to run the team without a coach telling you what to do. I think doing talk radio is the same way. So in 2017, I was kind of a baby sportscaster, and I probably didn't totally understand as a talk host exactly, you know, how to get into the draft and how to do it, what to do with it. And I got to tell you, I love these players. Like, I'm going to be sad when the first round's over. And then I'll get excited for the second round. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. Roman Yossi came on our show ahead of the Predators' trip to Vancouver. They'll play Sunday night. Roman Yossi came on the show, and he said something that I don't think is very true. We'll get to that coming up next here on our program. Hey, the NBA play-in tournament gives teams the chance to play their way into the postseason. So it only seems right that new customers on my official sportsbook app, FanDuel, can play their way into $150. Just place any $5 bet, and you'll get $150 in bonus bets, win or lose, to use during the NBA playoffs. That's right. Play in tonight. 3-pointers made, over-under point total, first basket score, and more, and really everything you can bet they've got. Just go to FanDuel.com/JGM to get started. That's FanDuel.com/JGM. FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. 21 and over in present Tennessee. First online real money wager only. $10 first deposit required. Bonus issue is non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire 7 days after receipt. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call the Tennessee Red Line at 1-800-889-9789. it seems like Quinn Hughes is probably going to win the Norris Trophy, and you're probably going to finish second. Is there something, knowing that the voting and everything else is going to be over, is there kind of, in your mind, this sense of showing everybody who really might be the best defenseman in the NHL?
No, not really, to be honest. I all I want to do is win the series, and that's the main thing. And obviously, he's a big part on that team, so we got to make sure we shut him down. And he's a great defenseman, and he's had an unbelievable year. And I love watching him play. He's a great skater. He's great offensively. He makes great plays. So he's definitely a big part. So our goal is going to shut him down. But it's not really between me and him. It's Preds against Vancouver, and as long as we get the win, that's all I can ask for.
There you go. That was Roman Josi on our show yesterday on the Preds playoff preview show saying, no, this isn't about me versus Quinn Hughes. This isn't about the fact that he's going to win the Norris Trophy and I'm going to finish second. And I don't have an opinion, by the way, as to who the better defenseman is because I don't watch Quinn Hughes play. So I can't tell you he's better than Josi or not. I will have an opinion this time next week. But Josi said it, and then I kind of made a comment at the end afterwards. I said, so you're the better player, right? I'm kidding, and we all laughed. But Hal Gill was on the show later on the Preds playoff preview show, and he said, Josi said that he's not worried about showing everybody that he's better than Quinn Hughes. Yeah, he's lying.
I heard you guys talking to Jost. There's no way he doesn't want to prove that he's the best defenseman in the world. There's no way. I just know he'll never say it because he's such a great guy, but he wants to be the best. He wants to show, and not because he wants to be the best, but he wants to be and what he said is, I want the team to win. Basically what he was saying is, I want to be the best on the best team to prove that I'm the best defenseman.
I don't even think that Hal needed to couch it like that at the end about, he wants to prove I'm on the best team and my team. First of all, I know that Roman Josi's number one goal is to win. But I absolutely think that Roman Josi is going to be on a mission in this series to prove that he should have won that Norris Trophy. And unlike the Cale Makar series a couple years ago, Josi's got firepower on his team to be able to prove it. And so to me, that gets me excited. That gets me, okay, we got some real juice in this series. And I'll say this about Vancouver. I don't know a lot about them. Yesterday I was glad that we had their color analyst on. Max was able, I guess, Max, the broadcasters, they know each other. Max was booked their color analyst. The guy told me a bunch about their team that I didn't already know, that I didn't know. And I was glad because I really don't know a lot about them. But I know that by Sunday, at 11:30 at night, we'll have a pretty good idea of what the Predators are going up against. But I absolutely think that if Quinn Hughes is a slam dunk for the Norris and he's going to win it, after the second half of the season that Roman Josi had, Roman Josi ought to have a chip on his shoulder. He ought to prove all those voters wrong. And that gets me excited because I love how, unlike years past, the Predators had guys that I couldn't, the Predators had guys like Duchesne and Johansson and Arvidsson and guys that I just can't count on. Forsberg, Josi, O'Reilly, I can count on those guys. And that gets me incredibly excited. Ian, I want you to X the phones right now. I don't want anybody to cheat. We did promise we'd give away a pair of tickets for Game 1 next Friday night. Who is free Friday night?
Game 3, technically.
What's that?
Game 3.
Yeah, Game 3. Home Game 1 is what it would say on the ticket if they printed tickets like they used to back in the day.
I miss those.
I don't like leaving, I'll leave them under the mat. I'll put them in the mailbox. I'll leave them at will call. I don't like, now I just text you the ticket. I gave you a keyword. I said, tell Ian that keyword. First person that tells Ian that keyword is going next Friday night. Clear your calendar. You will be joining us at Bridgestone Arena for what will be an early start time, 6:30. Hallelujah. For that 6:30 start next Friday. So good luck. Give Ian that keyword. Ian, unleash the hounds. Chad Withrow joins us next. Stillman and Company, Fireball Hot Take Friday, 102.5, 106 for the game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios on a Fireball Hot Take Friday. And, of course, we have playoff hockey. The Predators right here Sunday night, 9 o'clock against the Vancouver Canucks. They'll play Tuesday. They'll be at home on Friday and on Sunday. So get excited about that. We are joined, though, less than a week away from the NFL Draft by Chad Withrow from Outkick, who always joins us on a Fireball Hot Take Friday at 5 o'clock. So, Chad, I want to start right off the top. I am scared to death that the Titans are going to screw up what should be, I don't want to say an unscrewable situation, but they're picking 7th in a draft that has either 8 or 9 elite players in it, and I'm still afraid they're going to screw it up.
So what would screwing it up be to you? Trading back and missing out on one of those 8 or 9 players?
I think trading back and not getting, like, the required value to trade out of that elite spot. You know, TD was on the show yesterday, and I think TD is pretty well sourced. And TD was talking about how the Titans' number one goal, they want to trade out. And I'm worried that what they'll do is they'll, say, trade out to 12 with Denver. And they'll get a second rounder next year and a third rounder this year. And I just don't think, say, moving from Joe Alt to Olu Fashanu is worth a second rounder next year and a third rounder this year. I think they're much better off, you know, taking the elite player, whether it's a Dunze, Neighbors, Bowers, Alt, taking the elite player and going from there.
Yeah, I've started now because we're kind of into like mock draft 2 and 3.0. I know you've got your 2.0 out right now.
Sure.
Where we're starting to get down to the nitty gritty where every draft analyst, every NFL analyst will start to have their final mock drafts being presented. So I looked at 5 different ones today, and 4 of the 5 had the Titans taking Joe Alt. And the only other scenario was the Titans trading back, and I believe drafting Fashanu. The same scenario you just brought up. So I think the odds they screw this up are very, very slim. And I am comforted by the fact that almost every mock draft that I'm looking at does not have anyone swinging and trying to take a tackle before the Titans and trying to take Joe Alt. So he should be available for the Titans, and you've got your left tackle of the present and future with Joe Alt. That's what I think they're going to do. It's what I think they should do. And barring getting a massive haul in return, if you trade that pick and trade down, I think that's what should happen. And I will be a bit disappointed if they do anything other than that, because you and I both know, and Titans fans know, that tremendous need across the offensive line for this Titans team. To get Joe Alt, who does look to be quite a bit better than the other tackles in this draft, could be a major score for this Titans team.
What do you make of the fact, and I reported this earlier today, that when it comes to top 30 visits and actually going and flying and traveling to that team, Alt's taken 3. The Jets, the Giants, and the Titans. The Giants, of course, at 6, the Jets at 10, the Titans at 7. What do you make of those being the only 3 teams? Now, he's done Zoom interviews with pretty much half the league, but as far as physically going and being in the facility, it's only those 3 teams.
Well, it shows me it's a guy who knows he's going to be a top 10 pick. And he's only going to be entertained by those that he believes are realistic, you know, in top 10 position to draft him. So that's what it tells me about him and his agent knowing his value, and that he's going to be the first tackle taken off the board. So why waste time with a lot of teams, you know, that are drafting in the teens or the 20s when he's not going to be available for them. I also like, speaking of these visits, I do like how the Commanders, it's almost like quarterback survivor. You know, they brought in all 4 quarterbacks on the same day, almost like they were going to vote one off the island as they went along. So I kind of like that approach also. But with Joe Alt, I think it's because he knows he's going to go very high in the draft.
Well, I wonder if you think that part of this, though, is, you know, we talked about the Chargers at 5 with Alt. We haven't talked about the Giants at 6 with Alt. And I do wonder, like, you know, they have 3 tackles on their roster. Andrew Thomas is a bona fide franchise left tackle, and they're paying him like he's one. Evan Neal, they took high 2 years ago, though he has been kind of a disappointment. And Jermaine Illuminor was the right tackle the last 2 years for the Raiders. They signed him in free agency. And so the Giants were kind of the surprise team to me when it came to Alt. And that he hasn't visited the Chargers, I think, Is that telling? Do you read into that at all?
I don't think. I mean, yeah, it's interesting that they would even entertain drafting tackle, but I mean, this could also, be a little bit manipulation of trying to get someone to trade up by putting the threat out there that they're going to take him. Would the Titans trade up those? Giants are at 5, correct?
Giants
so they
are
would
6.
trade up 6. So trade up that one spot even if they feel like, hey, we could actually draft this guy. But it's tough to tell. But for a while I was really worried about teams in front of the Titans taking all off the board. I'm not as concerned about that now. And I really believe the Giants are going to target one of those top receivers with their pick. But, I mean, who knows? You can't have enough good offensive linemen. And if they feel like they could plug and play with a guy like Joe Alt, maybe they go for another tackle.
Do you think that the Jets at 10 bringing him in, Mike Francesa has said that if the Jets pass on Alt at 10, they should be shot. They have 2 veteran tackles. I look at that as the line of demarcation. I think you could trade with Atlanta, obviously, at 8. I don't think Atlanta's going to move to 7 to take Alt. And maybe even Chicago at 9 is probably not going to take Alt. I heard they haven't really done any homework on Alt. But I don't think you can – I don't think that TD brought up the idea of trading to 11 or 12 and still taking Alt. I don't think that's a possibility, especially with the Jets at 10, even though I'm sure Aaron's going to want somebody that will start and help him right now. I just don't see the Jets with 2 veteran tackles, one of whom is Tyron Smith, who might play 5 games this year. I cannot imagine the Jets passing on Alt. Do you think that that's a slam dunk if he's there 10, and thus we should treat 10 as the line of demarcation for Alt?
Yeah, and I think trading into the teens at all or trading out of the top 10 is a slam dunk that the Titans will not be drafting Joe Alt. That's what that is to me. That's the Titans saying, whatever we're getting in return, plus Fashanu or what. Because I think you can kiss the chances of Alt goodbye if they trade out of the top 10 with anyone. Any scenario I've looked at or thought about with the Titans trading out of 7 and trading down usually is a trade with someone trying to come up and get a quarterback, whether it be the Vikings or the Broncos or whoever. And by trading down into that spot, I do think you're forfeiting the opportunity to draft Joe Alt. And you are basically making the statement that we're good with another one of these tackles or going to a different position because we're going to get extra draft picks in return.
What do you make of Mark Dominic last week on SiriusXM? He said that he thinks it's a slam dunk. If Brock Bowers is available at 7, the Titans draft him. He called it Stockton to Malone. And then, I guess, did a conference call yesterday. Jim Wyatt wrote an article about it at the Titans website. There was Mark Dominic's dark horse candidate, and anybody who read the show knows how much he loves Brock, or that has listened to the show knows how much he loves Brock Bowers. And it was that he would take Brock Bowers and take a tackle in the second round and roll with Nicholas Petit-Frere. What do you make of that? Bowers at 7, and what Dominic says is a slam dunk.
Well, I love Brock Bowers, and I'm not going to be upset if Brock Bowers lands on the Titans. And I think any team that gets Brock Bowers is getting a terrific football player and basically a jumbo wide receiver. I'm hearing all this talk about, well, he's only 245 pounds and he's not quite big enough to be a great blocker. And I'm thinking, yeah, some of these guys are good blockers, but you're not putting Travis Kelce on the field to block. That's not the first thing you're thinking about. Even Gronk, with as huge as he was, you're not putting him out there thinking, boy, he's a great blocker. You're putting him out there because he's a difference maker, and that's Brock Bowers. So I think he's going to be good for whoever drafts him. I think that we've got a little bit of draft fatigue where someone just seems so perfect. So now we start to poke holes in him, and that's what's going on with Brock Bowers. I also think that Mark Dominic has way too high of an opinion of Will Levis to compare him to John Stockton. Stockton to Malone?
I don't think that's what he meant by that, but I hear what you're saying.
Are you kidding me?
I don't think that's what he meant by that, though I don't want to speak for how he feels about Levis.
Well, what is Stockton to – I don't understand the reference of Stockton to Malone.
I think he's talking about, the ability to make the pick is it's such a slam dunk to make that pick is Stockton passing it off to Malone. I do not think that's what he thinks of Will Levis. Though, again, I don't want to speak for him. He can make that comment.
Well, the first thing I thought was he was saying that this is going to be the John Stockton to Malone connection in Nashville for the Titans for years to come with Will Levis. And I would love that, right? I mean, that would be awesome. I'm not saying it couldn't be that. But man, oh man, that's some high praise for a guy that we haven't seen a lot of in the NFL.
Well,
and that it's very, very mixed returns, the NFL so far for Will Levis to compare him for John Stockton. But Jared, I'm going to stay consistent on this, and we've talked about it throughout this process. The Titans have to go need-based. This is not a luxury draft. This is not one where you go in and say, Brock Bowers is so good, we have to take him, and we can't pass on a guy of that talent level. This is a draft where you go in and say, we got to get a left tackle. We got to draft tackle. We got to draft this spot. You need to go each round and say, we have to get this position. I think we're past the time that their needs are so glaring at a few spots that we're past the time of just taking the best available player. And I really want this 7th overall pick to be a left tackle, and I really hope that it's Joe Alt.
Well, it's funny you brought up the whole John Stockton Levis thing because Titan fans got really, really mad at me. I, by the way, disagree with you on just the need-based thing. For the most part, you're right. But, I mean, if there's a guy that's going to be a superstar 5 years from now, we won't remember what you needed or what you didn't. But I will say this on the Levis front. I have gotten a lot of crap from people in town this week because I have said, just if Drake May is still on the board, I would take him at 7 and I would trade Levis. And I understand you're not going to get a first-round pick for Levis if you turn around and trade him. But I just think that May is a much better quarterback prospect. And even the Titans probably think that, considering that they took a guard before they took Will Levis last year. And the amount of Titan fans that are like, he's a franchise quarterback, Jared. I mean, it honestly is driving me crazy because I feel like half this fan base is detached from reality.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't seen enough to say that he is the future. Now, the hope is that he's the future.
Yes.
That's the best scenario for the Titans. And only Brian Callahan and Rand Carthon, and they're never going to reveal their true thoughts, but they're the only two that know what the future is with Will Levis, or they think they know what they can get out of him moving forward. I mean, I don't hate the idea. I don't know about Drake May. It's a little odd that we just haven't heard much about him. A lot of buzz, which could be good, could be bad. But if you have that quarterback that you think is the best or second best in this draft, and you have them as a much better prospect than your current quarterback, yeah, I mean, there's some merit in going and drafting that guy, and that's now your quarterback. But it's also tough when, second round pick the year before, haven't really seen one way or the other how good he's going to be. You still need that tackle. You still need two of them, really. That's going to be a tough reach to make right now, even if they have the opportunity to draft Drake May in that spot. And I don't think they will. I think he's going to go before the Titans draft at 7.
More with Chad Withrow coming up next. It is Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3. The Game. It is a Friday, a Fireball Hot Take Friday, which means it is a hot seat Friday with Chad Withrow, who is on the program less than a week away from the draft. Chad, do you have a thought, or do you want to go right to the hot seat?
Let's roll with the hot seat.
Okay, number one, rank these players not based upon who's best for the Titans, but how you think they will be as NFL players. Malik Neighbors, Joe Alt, Brock Bowers, Rome Odunze.
Brock Bowers, Joe Alt, Malik Neighbors, Rome Odunze. 1 through 4. I think Joe Alt is the most surefire guy of that group. And I think that he is going to be, I believe he's going to be, a career franchise building block left tackle, bookend type guy. So I'm going to go him first. I think Bowers is pretty close to a slam dunk also. Bowers to Malik Neighbors, incredible talent. Could be great, could be a bust. We've seen receivers we thought, were incredible talents that it doesn't always work out for them. So I'm going him 3. And then I love Rome Odunze, but he's the 4th of that group.
Okay, number 2. Which player do you think will end up with the best NFL career in this draft on the defensive side of the ball?
Best career on the defensive side of the ball in this draft. Boy, I'm trying to go through different position groups and figure out who I think it would be. I'm going to go Dallas Turner. I really like him and his upside as a guy who can get to the quarterback. He's not going to be the first defensive guy taken off the board, I don't think. But I think when all's said and done, he's going to end up with the best career.
So I like Dallas Turner. I also really love this Quinyon Mitchell out of Toledo, but I always think a pass rusher is better than a defensive back. Okay, number 3. This one I'm actually excited about. Our midday show yesterday broached the idea of a Bleacher Report story which said the Titans should trade out of the 7th pick, moving to 28 with the Buffalo Bills. In exchange for 7, the Titans would get 28, 60, which is in the 2nd round, 128, and Buffalo's first-round pick next year. Willie Donick says it is a slam dunk for the Titans. Caroline would not do that deal. Would you, Chad Withrow, make that kind of deal?
Ooh, I love the idea of 2 first-round picks a year from now. I don't love the idea of taking, the 4th or 5th best tackle is probably what you're going to get at 28. If I'm sticking with drafting offensive tackle in that spot, I'm saying no deal. I'm staying and drafting a franchise difference maker at left tackle in Joe Alt and not making that trade, because the drop off from 7 to 28 of the type of player you're going to get is gigantic. So I'm going to stay at 7 if I'm the Titans and not take that deal.
Well, not only that, too. I mean, I just think about the fact that Buffalo's first rounder next year is not going to be an elite player. So I just traded away an elite player so that I can get, 28, 27 next year, which because it's next year really means it's like the end of the 2nd round kind of pick. The end of the 2nd round this year and a 4th? No. I said in order to make this deal, because Buffalo's so good and they have a franchise quarterback, I need Buffalo's 1 this year, their 2 this year, their 1 next year, and not only their 2 next year, but also Minnesota's 2 with which they have for Stephon Diggs. And you would say, well, that's crazy. They're not going to say yes to that. That's the point. It has to be a lot.
Well, and they might say yes to that. They might, because if they're trying to make a deal like this, that's a deal done to go try to win a Super Bowl right now.
Mm-hmm.
So they're thinking whoever they're bringing in at 7 is going to help them win a Super Bowl this year. So if you're thinking in those terms, then you get a little bit desperate, and you might pull the trigger on a deal like the one you're talking about. But with those terms that you brought up to me, no, I'm staying at 7 and picking him on the Titans.
A.J. Brown yesterday changed all of his social media profile pictures to a picture of Tom Brady in a Patriots uniform. A.J. also followed Jacoby Brissett and KJ Osborne, both New England Patriots quarterback and wide receiver. A.J. Brown then later sent out a tweet saying that Tom Brady was his favorite player, and just after watching The Dynasty, he wanted to kind of make his picture Brady, and it had nothing to do with him wanting out of Philadelphia or wanting to go to New England. Do we believe A.J. Brown?
Oh, my gosh. This is so exhausting because this is the new thing, right? We got to look at what people are doing on social media. They change their profile, they do this. And then players come back and say, I don't know why everybody's making a big deal about this. Who was it? Oh, Justin Fields had the thing that he, like, unfollowed the Bears and everyone. You know, he's like, I just didn't want to know about it. I don't know why people are making a big deal out of it. They make a big deal out of it because you know they're going to make a big deal about it. Like, this is – I hate this with players. They know exactly what they're doing. A.J. Brown knows exactly what he is doing when he does things like this. He is trying to get a rise out of people. He is trying to get attention on him. And then they're going to play the naive card of, I don't get it. I'm a big Brady fan. I love the dynasty and blah, 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 blah. He knows what he's doing.
Well, remember all of his Twitter bitching here?
Say that again?
Remember all of his Twitter complaining that he did here?
Yeah. Well, and it's so, like, it's this game, this back and forth, this dance of fans will say, well, why are people in the media so worked up about someone's social media? Who cares, what they follow or who they follow or what their profile picture is? It doesn't matter. And I'm thinking, no, the fans do care because then they talk about it. And then the players act like, why are people considering my social media? But they know what they're doing. And I just hate this tug of war and the back and forth. A.J. Brown knows what he's doing when he does that. A.J. Brown, to me, is a great receiver who is chronically miffed about something. He is a man. I've worked with people like this in the past. There are people that just have to have battles to fight at all times. They are not happy or content unless they are at war with someone. I think A.J. Brown's one of those people. He has to have a battle to fight at all times. Could be with Jalen Hurts, could be with the Eagles front office, could be with a coach, could be with a teammate. It doesn't matter. It's got to be somebody.
Sure, his battle was with the Titans.
Well, he's going to find something to have a problem with.
His battle was with the Titans the year that he acted well and the Eagles won all those games because he was out to prove the Titans wrong. And then once that ship had sailed, then it was, okay, now I'm mad at the coach. And what's crazy is that John Robinson may end up getting proven right about this, about not the taking Traylon Burks, but just the A.J. Brown being a problem. But he will have long since been fired by the time that would have come to fruition. Okay, so FedEx pledges $25 million to the NIL program at Memphis. Will this revitalize Memphis basketball?
I mean, it should, but I thought Penny Hardaway was going to revitalize Memphis basketball.
I mean, wasn't Penny NIL before there was NIL?
I mean, Penny Hardaway, yeah. I mean, come on. This is a guy who knew how to work NIL before it was legal, and I thought that was going to be the secret for Memphis. Penny Hardaway's been a huge disappointment. There's no other way to slice it. He has. I thought he would do well. I thought he'd get top talent there, and he has gotten some top talent there, but it's not been the right talent, and he's not been able to put it together. So, I mean, look, sure. Is it working for Coach Calipari in Arkansas with all the money they're spending? Yeah. I think it's working with their roster and their coaching staff and who they're bringing in. You spend more, it should help. So this should absolutely help Memphis land some top talent. The question I would pose is, do they have the right guy to bring that talent in and to create an atmosphere and culture of responsibility, teamwork, and something that's going to produce something more than, getting to the NCAA tournament, getting bounced in the first round or the second round. Or just getting to the tournament period, which would be an upgrade from this past season. So I've got my doubts on Penny Hardaway, but $25 million from FedEx certainly is going to help him get some players that hopefully, if you're a Memphis fan, you look around and think, well, there's no way they should lose a lot with these guys, even if the coaching is bad.
Last one quickly for you, Chad Withrow on the hot seat. If you were a TV executive and you could bid on either the Masters going forward or the women's NCAA basketball tournament going forward, which one would you rather have?
I would rather have the Masters because I believe the consistency is there from a viewership standpoint. I think the branding is a little bit better. But I also think that the NCAA women's viewership is going to go down now that Caitlin Clark isn't playing, and that's just a fact. Do I think it's going to just completely crater? No. I do think that she has raised the profile of women's college basketball to a level that now she is going to hand the baton off to Juju Watkins or whoever the next superstar is, and it's still going to be good. And it's going to be well rated, and a lot of people are going to watch, but not the same amount of people who watch Caitlin Clark versus Angel Reese or Caitlin Clark versus UConn or Caitlin Clark versus Dawn Staley in South Carolina going for a perfect season. So I would still like the consistency and the value of the Masters. I would bid on that if I'm a TV exec. But it's a pretty good deal right now for Disney, ESPN to have that women's tournament, given all the returns they got this past year. I'll tell you what's not a great return on investment right now is the NBA. Oof. And I think they're finding the negotiations tough right now for the money they want to get from a network.
I will say this, and I'm going to lump the Masters in here. I didn't give a rat's ass about the Masters last weekend, and apparently a lot of America was with me on that, and I really don't give a rat's ass about the NBA.
Yeah, I don't care about the NBA. I do care about the Masters, but I was also terribly bored by the Sunday round of the Masters. And I think part of that is Scottie Scheffler is just so good right now, and he's such a good dude that there's no conflict there. And there's no one that's challenging him. I mean, there wasn't one of those guys that started the day in the mix that made a charge at all. They were laying up. They weren't doing anything. And Scottie Scheffler just kind of walked in the park, had no problems, and it didn't lead to much drama, and it, to me, didn't lead to much entertainment.
With that, that is the hot seat. Chad Withrow, great stuff. Have a great weekend, and we will talk next week ahead of not only Game 3 of the Stanley Cup playoffs for the Predators, but the NFL Draft Round 1 will be behind us.
I hope that this segment was more entertaining than the Masters last week. Always fun joining you, Jared. We'll talk to you next week.
All right, Chad Withrow from Outkick. I have my Predators official prediction. I have not picked for the Predators in forever. We'll do that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
I know if you go up to Canada, there's more travel, all that. There's probably more pressure on the Canucks to win because of the Canadian market and Vancouver just as a market itself.
Well, if you want me to ramp up the pressure, I'll ramp up the pressure. I don't have a problem with that.
No, I think both fan bases will ramp up the pressure. I just know in Canada, it's 24/7. Vancouver Canucks. We're down south here. There's, you got baseball. You get different.
We got
things
left
happening.
tackles we got to argue about and whatnot.
All the pressure's on them. I'm not saying that just to be coy or to start the playoff talk already, but it's true. No one expected us to be here except us. And, we're probably not going to be a favorite in the series or any series we play. So, let's play free. Let's play with no pressure, and let's go after someone.
Barry Trotz talking playoffs right there and saying, hey, if we play Vancouver, and this was even before the matchup, so he says if we play Vancouver, more pressure on them than pressure on us. And I don't think that I doubt that, even though it's not like Vancouver is Edmonton, where they've had Connor McDavid now for a decade, and they're kind of saying, okay, when are we going to win? But that's a different discussion. So I will make my official prediction as far as what's going to happen in this series. I remember I was Winnipeg in 6. Everybody got mad. It's been a long time since I picked the Predators to win a playoff series. And that's exactly what I'm going to do here. I think the Nashville Predators are going to win this series against the Vancouver Canucks. I will take the Predators in 6 games. I think, again, I've said many times already today, I think whoever wins game 1 wins the series. I really do. Because if the Predators win game 1, I think they get Vancouver on their heels. And maybe Vancouver takes game 2, but then all of a sudden home ice goes back to Bridgestone Arena. And I think so. Here's what I think is going to happen. Predators win game 1. Predators win game 3. Predators win game 5 in Vancouver. Predators win game 6 in Nashville. I think the Predators are, again, going to win this series in 6 games. And here's why I think the Predators are going to win this series. Now, I can't remember the last time I picked the Predators to win a series. I didn't think they were going to beat Carolina. They didn't. I certainly did not think they were going to beat Colorado. Oh, anything can happen, Jared. And they got swept. Maybe, I don't count Arizona in the bubble as a playoff series. That, to me, that was the play-ins, not the playoffs. But technically, it was a playoff series, and I'm pretty sure I picked the Predators in that. I did pick the Predators to beat the Dallas Stars in 19. So it has been 5 years since I have picked the Predators to win a legitimate and true and fair playoff series. But here's why I'm going to pick the Predators. Number 1, experience. Ryan O'Reilly is a Conn Smythe winner. Ryan McDonough and Luke Shin have won the Stanley Cup. Roman Josi has played in 85 playoff games. Philip Forsberg has played in 75 playoff games. By comparison, their goalie, Thatcher Demko, who's apparently a really good goalie, though I don't know much about him. Thatcher Demko's played 4 playoff games. Now, I'm not saying that playoff experience is everything, but it is something. Andrew Burnett came on the show yesterday, and Andrew Burnett said, hey, we learned that he was talking about himself, about mistakes that he made when he was the interim coach on Florida's bench a couple years ago, saying, yeah, there are some things that I reflect on, and, you can always second guess yourself and blah, 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 and I'm going to keep those things to myself, but there are definitely things I wish I did. Now, Rick Tocchet, their coach, has a lot of experience, but I'll never forget Peter Laviolette telling me about that 2015 series. That series, the Predators absolutely blew. And I mean, they blew it against Chicago, who ended up winning the Cup. And Laviolette always says that group needed that series. I think this is the series that Vancouver's young group needs. The second reason is the pressure that Barry Trotz brought up. The Predators have nothing to lose. And then the other part about the pressure that I think is probably more important than, oh, we have nothing to lose, everybody at home is going to be banking on whether or not, we're all going to get fired if we lose and things like that. That's not necessarily the pressure that I look at and say, okay, that's going to be the pressure that defines the series. By having home ice, Vancouver probably thinks that they have to win both games at home. I mean, it is a depressing feeling when you've got home ice and you lose game one like the Predators did in 2019 against Dallas or 2018 against Winnipeg in the second round. It is a depressing feeling. And so here's Vancouver, and Vancouver, they're not looking at the Predators thinking the Predators are some bums. I mean, they know the Predators are legit. And so they're looking at this series saying, okay, like, we've got home ice, we've we better win game 2. And that's what happened in that Chicago series in 2017, by the way. Predators stole game 1. Rene completely stole it. Game 2, Chicago fired a bunch of pucks on the net, and Pekka kept him out for about the first 5 minutes of the game, and the Predators got on the board, and then Chicago's like, holy crap, what's going on here? So I think that pressure that Barry Trotz is talking about, I think that is real, especially if you take game 1 at Rogers Arena. It's not over if you lose game 1, but I will stay steadfast in saying that the winner of game 1 wins this series, and I believe the Predators are going to win game 1. If the Predators lose game 1, my tune will change. I will then think that Vancouver is going to win the series. And the third reason I think the Predators are going to win this series is because I don't think Vancouver has entered their prime yet. Quinn Hughes is 24. Elias Pettersson is 25. Brock Besser is 26. Now, JT Miller's 30, so he's definitely in his prime. Thatcher Demko's 28. In the NHL, to me, prime is about 28 to 33. That's usually about the prime of these guys. And I go back to that Chicago team. That Chicago team in 15, they were in their prime. I think Forsberg was like 21 years old. Yossi's 33, Forsberg 31, O'Reilly 32, Saros 28. So they're all right there. They've got the experience, but they're not old. They've got the ability. They've got the size and the strength that a grown man that's been doing this for a while has. They've got all that. And so between the experience, the pressure, and the primes, I think the Predators are going to take game 1 of this series. I think the Predators are going to understand that even after taking game 1 of the series is far from over. And I think the Predators are going to win this series. I think, again, they're going to win game 1 on Sunday. Everybody's going to be excited. You're going to be excited on Monday. I'm going to be excited on Monday. Everybody's going to be excited on Monday. They're going to play on Tuesday. They're going to lose. Then they're going to come back here on Friday. They're going to win. Then they're going to lose on Sunday because Vancouver will be playing desperate hockey for their playoff lives. And then game 5, again, just like how I think game 1 is a pivotal game, game 5 will become one of those big pivotal games. Predators will win that, and then they'll win here in game 6. So if you're like Peter Laviolette used to be, and you think that it's bad luck for me to pick for your team to win, well, I hate to break it to you. That's what's happening here. I am taking the Predators to win. And I am taking them to win on Sunday. 9 o'clock puck drop. Of course, all that action's right here, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. And Max will apparently have a special, extra long pregame show starting at 6 o'clock on Sunday, getting you ready for puck drop right here on 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Meanwhile, Vandy Baseball is next. Stillman and Company. We'll see you all on Monday after Game 1. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.